Good evening. The second evening of 2025 Annual Town Meeting will now be in order. Please do silence your mobile devices. I see that there is a sufficient number of voters present to allow us to open the meeting. This evening, we have a high-interest article specially scheduled for 6:45 p.m. That's Article 34, the Stormwater Enterprise Fund expenditures. We will then continue with the annual town meeting warrant, beginning with Article 12, followed by Articles 10 and 11, in accordance with the vote of the meeting last night to reorder these articles. The meeting will take up the rest of the articles in the order in which they appear in the warrant, except for Article 46, the citizen petition on a zoning bylaw amendment for a continuing care retirement community overlay district. That one is specially scheduled as a high-interest article for 6:45 p.m. tomorrow night. The meeting is taking place in the gymnasium and the auditorium tonight. To vote on an article, you must be occupying a seat in one of those rooms. Live coverage of this evening's meeting is being broadcast by Minuteman Media Network on our local access channel 9 and streaming on the web and on Minuteman Media's YouTube channel. The meeting is also being broadcast live on our high school radio station, WIQH 83.3. I'd now like to invite Fire Chief Tom Judge to tell us what we need to know in the unlikely event of an emergency during the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a brief review of the safety features of the gymnasium and the auditorium. Both rooms have exits at all four corners. In the gymnasium, that includes one that is partially shielded by the screen to my left and your right. But I assure you there is an exit there. If you are taking advantage of the child care in the maroon gym, and we do have to evacuate for any reason, please plan to meet your children out in the courtyard just outside of the cafeteria, because that is where the staff will be bringing them to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Judge. And on behalf of the meeting, I want to thank Chief Judge and the Concord Police Department, the Concord Fire Department, as well as Chief Mulcahy and the Concord Police Department for their assistance during town meeting. We also owe a really big thank you to the team that makes town meeting possible. The team's too large to thank everyone individually, but you all know who you are. Last night, the meeting elected Mr. Dean Banfield of 73 Walden Terrace as Deputy Town Moderator. Mr. Banfield will be presiding in the auditorium. I want to introduce our hardworking elected and appointed officials who are at tables at the front of the gymnasium. The Select Board is over here to my right and your left. The Finance Committee is over here huddling to my left. And the School Committee is over there at the tables in the back there. And just in case anyone's wondering, the open meeting law doesn't actually apply to town meeting, so it's okay that they're over there huddling. We also have with us this evening from the Office of Anderson and Krieger, our Town Council, Mina Macarius. He will address the meeting if we have a question for him. Most of the materials pertaining to the business of the meeting will be found in the Town Meeting Finance Committee report and briefing book that was delivered to all Concord homes and is available for download on the town's website, concordma.gov. You will also find on the tables in the cafeteria a couple of handouts with last-minute changes and recommendations for actions on the articles. At the front of the briefing book, you will find Concord Town Meeting Traditions and Procedures, which provides a very useful explanation of our town meeting process. In general, we follow Town Meeting Time 4th edition as our procedural guide. If you do have any questions about town meeting procedure, please feel free to talk with our town meeting resource person, Mike Lawson of 1695 Lowell Road. He is available for consultation on process issues and assistance in drafting and presenting motions to amend. Mr. Lawson is seated in the front row here in the gymnasium. I'm going to ask him to stand and wave so we know where he is. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. I am very pleased to announce 5 appointments to the Finance Committee, each for a term of 3 years. Suresh Bhatia of 441 Sudbury Road for 2nd term, Brian Conway of 8 Jonas Brown Circle for a 1st term, John Garofalo of 51 Coolidge Road for a 2nd term, Chris Johnson of 51 Pilgrim Road for a 1st term, and Lindsay Liss of 69 Potter Street for a 2nd term. I am grateful to each of these citizens for their willingness to take on the important and demanding work of the Finance Committee. The choice to accept an appointment to FinCom is really a significant commitment to our town. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize those who are completing their terms on the Finance Committee. Would you please extract yourselves from the huddle? Outgoing Finance Committee Greg Garriello and outgoing Finance Committee member Dee Ortner. Please join me in a round of applause for these folks for giving their time and talent to our town. Thank you. The town is always in search of more citizens willing to bring their skills and common sense to the conduct of town affairs on boards and committees, and you can read about the important roles that our boards and committees have in the annual report that is out there on the tables and also posted on the website. Volunteer cards are available in the cafeteria and also on the town website. We do depend heavily as a community on the work of our volunteers, and we always need more of them. We have some visitors to our town meeting tonight, and we welcome you. Each visitor should have registered in the cafeteria and received a visitor badge, and they should be sitting in the visitors section unless they have received permission from the moderator to sit elsewhere. All voters should have received a voting slip and a clicker when they checked in. Please keep both your voting slip and clicker handy. Pursuant to the rule of the meeting adopted by the meeting last night, we will be using clickers on votes under the articles and raising paper slips for votes on procedural issues. You will find an FAQ on electronic voting at page 127 of the briefing book if you'd like to know more. Only you may vote with the paper slip and the clicker that you have received. You should keep your clicker with you if you need to go to an area of the building outside the gymnasium or the cafeteria. If you do wish to go outside the building and plan to return, you will need to leave your clicker with one of the election workers and collect it upon your return. Please do be sure to turn in your clicker to the election workers before you leave. They won't work outside the building, they're expensive to replace. And there's no point in hanging onto your clicker for tomorrow night because any clicker that is not returned tonight will be blocked from registering a vote tomorrow night because we think it's lost. If you have trouble using your clicker or you think that it's not working, there are help desks here. To my right, there's a help desk in the auditorium and there's one in the cafeteria. So let's take a moment now to test our clickers. I'm going to tell you when the voting window is open, and when it is open, push either the red no button or the green yes button. You will see the yellow abstain button doesn't do anything. It's the same as not voting. You will see a number light up in your screen, 1 if you have pressed yes, 2 if you have pressed no, and when your vote has registered, you will see OK in the screen that is on your clicker. And the voting window will remain open for about 45 seconds, and when we close it, the results will be shown on the screen. Can we put up the test your clickers screen, please? And can we open the voting window? Okay, the voting window is now open. Okay, let's close the voting window. Okay. 129 of you voted yes on testing your clickers, and 90 of you voted no. Okay. So, tonight, convening for town meeting, we are carrying forward a tradition of self-governance through direct democracy that began in Concord in colonial times. Votes of town meeting in 1774 and 1775 were part of setting the stage for the events at the North Bridge that we commemorated on April 19 and America's bid for independence. I expect that we will all agree that the 250th events in Concord were splendid. And on behalf of the meeting, I want to thank the 250th committee and our tireless town staff for all that they did to make those events possible. I'd like to invite Gary Clayton, co-chair of the 250th committee, to the podium. He has a brief message from the committee to the community.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, my name is Gary Clayton, 31 Black Birch Lane, and I am co-chair currently of the Concord 250 Executive Committee. And on behalf of my fellow co-chair, Rob Monroe, and the entire Concord 250 Executive Committee, we wish to offer our sincere thanks to the residents of this community, the local businesses and nonprofit organizations, the town and school departments, and the hundreds, and I do mean hundreds of volunteers who helped together ensure the success of Concord's recent ceremonies and celebrations on April 19th. After 3 years of planning and true to our values, Concord proved itself to be a warm and welcoming community to all of our residents and many, many guests. In honoring our town's centrality in the beginning of the American Revolution, and we again acknowledge the significance of these events in the founding of our nation. We also celebrated the ideals and dedication of all of those who fought and contributed to this historical moment, and we remain inspired that these values are as relevant now as they ever have been for all of us. We can be proud of what we achieved together this year, and we especially want to acknowledge and thank the many town and school staff who contributed to this endeavor. We simply could not have done it without them. Thank you again.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you again to the committee and to everyone on the town staff. I don't think there's a person on town staff who didn't participate in making the 250th anniversary events happen. One last word before we begin our work as Concord's legislature tonight. You will see on the podium in front of me and in front of the presenters the Concord Town Seal. The seal bears our town motto, Quam Firma Res Concordia. Roughly translated, it means, how strong is harmony? Voices in harmony are not all the same, but they have found a way to work together. As we deliberate on tonight's articles, let us make our own voices heard, recognize the value of voices other than our own, and find the voice of our community. We will now proceed to Article 34. Stormwater Enterprise Fund expenditures. You see the motion there is on the screen. Mr. Weber moves that the town take affirmative action to authorize the expenditure of $1,062,800 from the Stormwater Enterprise Fund to run the stormwater system. Can we have a second for the motion, please? I see that we have one. Thank you. Mr. Weber.
Sven Weber, 50 Belknap Street.
Proceed.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Public Works Commission. So we're talking about stormwater, and to give you a quick sense of what it means is The stormwater system in town is here to collect the water that comes down during rain, little rain, heavy rain, really storm, and it's collected in a separate system. It has nothing to do with our sewer system, just to be clear and to avoid confusion. So you see some pictures of the issues we are dealing with. It can be just a nuisance in some situations, but if our stormwater system fails, it typically fails big and massive, and the costs associated with that can be significant. We had 2 instances in the last 3 years, which combined generated costs of $1.5 million of emergency repairs of our roads and infrastructure because our stormwater system failed. What do we have in place? We have about 62 miles, 9 bridges, 1,640 manholes, and 3,700 catch basins. So it's not nothing. It's quite an infrastructure. In good old Concord fashion, this was underfunded for decades. We underfunded the federal mandates. It's a regulatory requirement we have to fulfill there. We have compromised environmental protection in here, and we have ongoing emergency and unplanned spending. Just to remind everyone to what this town meeting decided a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago at the 2024 town meeting. Because of these issues, town meeting approved the establishment of a stormwater enterprise fund effective July 1st this year, and adopted a bylaw regarding such enterprise fund. And this was done in a 2-step process to give Public Works time to prepare a budget and to really prepare a solid plan and how do we attack our issues we have in our stormwater infrastructure. The purpose of the bylaw, to remind everyone, is mainly address regulatory permits, the MS4 permit compliance, to deal with flood mitigation, to repair failing infrastructure, to deal with deferred maintenance, and deal with stormwater quality, because all of that goes in our rivers. There's some other rules in it. The full bylaw is in the warrant book that was sent to every household, so you can read this. So today, we are getting to the end of an 18-month process on stormwater. We started 18 months ago. Last year, the town approved that we are setting this up. We had a review of budgets, plenty of open meetings in Public Works Commission. We had a fee hearing about 2 weeks ago to set the stormwater fee. And today we are here to approve the expenditures. So to approve that the town and Public Works can spend the money that the fee is collecting and can invest into our stormwater system. We are estimating the fees will raise about $1 million in the next fiscal year. It is split about 45 to 55 between capital cost and operating cost. Let's go a little bit in the major cost blocks here. On the operating side first, the biggest cost driver of the operating cost is getting in compliance with regulation, the so-called MS4 permits. And that includes drainage, mapping. Actually, we have to build the inventory that we know actually what we have. Some of the stuff is so old, we don't know what is there. So that it's part of this. So just a little detail on the side. The second largest cost block is, you see it, asset management and drain line cleaning, making sure that things are getting cleaned. And then we have smaller cost items. In the first year, you see here $100,000 staffing, and in the beginning, building assistant administrative support. We expect right in the beginning, people will have a lot of questions around the billing and the fees. So we will have a specific budget line item there for this. But in general, we will use the same billing system as you receive your electricity bill or your water bill or your sewer bill. It will be the same invoice you will get. The capital cost, again, $300,000 are for the permit again. So do you see where most of the spending is done? We have to catch up on the MS4 permit. And then we have smaller capital expenditures here, mainly around the stormwater system updates and repairs. By the way, if you think about what BMP means, BMP retrofits is best management practices. We all love our three-letter. So where are we getting it from? I said we are raising this by stormwater fees. It is, in that sense, different from taxes, that if we would fund this by the general fund and by taxes, about 93% of the funding would come from residential property. Given we are measuring and applying the fee based on the impervious area, so based on the concrete and asphalt and the roof size, this is spread more equally across the different properties and what is actually built there. So we are shifting a little bit away the burden from the residentials to the non-residentials, the companies, the non-profits at actually the federal level, the state level, the private schools, also the public school has a line item for this, because there is these big buildings, if you think about Baker Street and others, this is where a lot of concrete and asphalt is built. So we want to have this there, and also builds in an incentive to potentially reduce this area or to do mitigating activities. So therefore, we also have credits available, both for the residential side and for the corporate non-residential side, to really think about how can you reduce your fee base if you do certain measures. They have to live up to a certain standard. Public works personnel will have to look at it and give guidance. We have a full web page available here where you can get more information, what it means and what kind of measures you can do to reduce your stormwater from your property. And get more details. You can type in your address and get what you would expect as a fee. And so you can see what this means and how much our GIS system figured out in how much of impervious area you have on your property. If you think this is wrong, there's a whole process. You can reach out, as described here, in how you can apply for correcting our records if you think it will be measured too much. So with that, I would ask you for your support. Again, this is support to authorize the expenditure of the money we raise via the fees. Last year, the town approved already that we have this enterprise fund and that we have the bylaw. Today, it's the approval of the expenditures for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. I want to note that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 34, as does the Public Works Commission. You will find the whole discussion of the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, including that QR code that you just saw on the screen, in the briefing book starting at page 56. And there's a full explanation of the Public Works Commission's recommendation. We'll hear now from Cameron McKinnott for the Select Board.
Thanks, everybody, and welcome to night 2 of town meeting. So, Cameron McKinnott for the Select Board. I just want to point out that the Select Board voted unanimously to support this article. We believe we will benefit from a stable and consistent funding source to address Concord's stormwater infrastructure needs. We think the amount requested is prudent, it's well documented, and it's going to allow us a greater level of proactive investment. Historically, that has not always been the case. As Mr. Weber talked about, 2 recent culvert failures that required emergency repairs and totaled more than $1.5 million. So my thanks to all in our Public Works Department and the Public Works Commission who've worked on this important effort. And again, the Select Board has voted unanimously to support this article. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will also point out that on page 118 of the briefing book, there is a couple of paragraphs from the Finance Committee explaining their recommendation as well. We'll now open the floor for questions and comments. We do have a pro and con microphone. To my right, your left is the pro in here. To my left and your right is the con. If you have a question, come to whatever microphone you want. Questions or comments?
Good evening, Sally
Oh,
Sanford.
hold on. You got to wait till you're recognized, but
Pardon me.
thank you very much. Pro microphone, please.
Good evening, I'm Sally Sanford, 25 Academy Lane, and I have a question. When we redid our property and put in driveways and things on it, we put in an extensive amount of dry well structure in order to keep all of our storm water on our property. Is there any kind of mitigating allocation or awareness of that for people who have done that kind of thing in terms of the amount that we would be charged?
Okay, I'm going to allow Mr. Weber to answer that question, but I want to point out that this article is about the budget for the Stormwater Enterprise Fund and whether the town approves that number to be taken from the fees. I recognize that this is a new system, and so people are understandably curious about how it's going to work and how it's going to impact them. So we'll have a few questions on that if people have them, but that's not really what this article is about. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Weber.
Yeah, just to be clear, yes, you can receive a credit. There's a process to apply for it with Public Works. It has to live up to the standard, and one important thing going forward, you will have to maintain it. Often stormwater systems, specifically on private property, are put in place, and then nobody is cleaning it and so on. So there will be annual checks built in and so on, but there is a possibility for you to get 25% credit. If you did that, there's another opportunity for a senior living discount and low income discount of 25%. So there are different discounts and credits built into the fee structure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker at the pro microphone. That's you, sir.
Marty Plotkin, 54 Francis Street.
Mr. Plotkin.
I apologize. I think this is another question in the same category. Much of the impervious structure in town is the roads and streets, and I read in the bylaw that they're not included in the fee structure. And I'm just wondering about the logic of weighting the collective responsibility for this overflow from the streets and so forth by the impervious structures on individual properties.
That would have been a better question for the stormwater bylaw last year, but we'll let Mr. Weber answer.
It would, and again, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem, and it's a very valid question. So that's why you can't discount yourself to zero. So there's a floor on the discount. So everyone, even if you do a lot of mitigation on your stormwater, can just, I think, maximum discount is 50% cumulative, both for residentials and on the commercial side. So that floor of fees pays for the common infrastructure like roads, public parking, and all of that we all share together.
Thank you. Let's go to the auditorium.
We have a speaker at the pro microphone. Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Ellie Garvey, 25 Damon Street.
Ms. Garvey.
Yeah, do you have any idea how much the fees are going to be?
Mr. Weber.
So the fees start for the residentials at $40 per year and then go up. I would say on average you will be somewhere around $112 on the residential side. On the commercial side, it starts at around about $112 a year and then going up depending on how much you have. So again, this is not a fee hearing. We had a fee hearing just 2 weeks ago. I understand these things, but again, it starts at $40 and then goes up, and the average for residential is about $112.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that some of these questions are context for the vote that we're taking, even though we are not voting on them. Anyone else in the auditorium?
No.
Well, looks like we're ready to go to a vote. Could we have the voting screen, please? And let's see, Shannon and Donna, are you able to put a 45-second timer up on the voting screen? Great. So open the window, please. It is open. Okay, let's close the voting window. The article passes by a very wide majority, vote of 290 to 13, and I do so declare. We will now proceed to Article 12. This one is the Concord Carlisle Regional School District budget. Both the Finance Committee and the Select Board are recommending affirmative action on this article. You see the motion on the screen. Could we have a second for the motion, please? Thank you. And you will find you will find some material on this in the briefing book on page 40. Dr. Hunter.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight I'm here to give you an overview of the Concord Carlisle Regional High School budget for FY26. We have the slides. There we go. So we make a few assumptions in our budget when we're planning. We are generally always aiming for level service while meeting the legal mandates that we're required to accommodate. Of note, in both this budget and the Concord Public School budget are our homeless transportation costs, primarily resulting from the emergency shelter. So we will explain that as it goes, but we have not budgeted those, and we'll tell you how that plays out in each budget. We have been notified that the shelter will be closing July 31st. So it is not expected to be a factor in the FY26 budget per se, but there's some residual things to play out that do have some impact. A summary of our budget for this coming year is an overall increase of the operating budget of 3.62%, and you can see the breakdown there. I'll go through each of these categories in a very brief fashion, and you'll see where some of our struggles have been and where we were able to find savings. In terms of teaching and instructional support, this is where the teacher salaries are and our instructional staff. So this is always the largest increase typically. In building our budget, we are often looking for savings through retirements, attrition, or in terms of reduction of force. Because we've had small enrollment declines across all of the schools, we've been adjusting for that. And so you'll see we've this year made almost a 1.0 FTE adjustment. In addition, we have some tuition coming in through some of our special education programs. Other districts are sending their students to us, and then we are collecting tuition from them, so we have generated some revenue there. And we are always looking to offset COLA, steps and lanes through attrition. So when we bring in a new position, we're always looking to come in at a lower step and lane, which is on our scale, less experience, and hopefully find some savings there while maintaining quality education. Other school services, this is where some of our outside costs start to impact us. Special education will be a theme of this discussion with the high school tonight. We had experienced $122,000 increase in special education transportation. Those are for students both out of district and transporting within the district, but not able to ride the large school bus. We've made some adjustments in athletics for our organizational structure to both accommodate some coaching needs when our teams are larger, some benchmarking through the contract process, and to look at an assistant athletic director because our program runs 7 days a week now because of a shortage of officials. So we were able to trade that athletic director assistant through some of the other things that we've accommodated and lowered. Maintenance and operations, we're looking at a $108,000 increase here. Some of this is due to our networking security needs after our cyber attack a year ago. So we've upgraded our safety and security there. Some increases in heating costs. We have adjusted for the water, sewer, stormwater assessment. Good timing for me to mention that. That's in both our budgets, and are always looking at whatever staffing needs we have there. Out-of-district tuitions is worth a few minutes. This was our largest driver this year. I want to just thank the Finance Committee and the town at large for really a willingness to understand the process here, some of the things we can control and some of the things that we can't. We've had an uptick of need at the high school for a multitude of different reasons that we're certainly reviewing and looking at, but more students needed out-of-district placements. And those placements actually happened about 2 years ago, so they impacted our FY24 budget. We came into FY25, $500,000 out of budget, so that was been an ongoing conversation with the school committee. And with great gratitude, we appreciate that the Finance Committee was willing to hear those challenges and allow us some out-of-guideline discussion here so that we could rectify the baseline here and not have these needs compete with all of the other programs. So with great gratitude, we have been able to get ourselves back level footing, and we'll go into FY26 if you approve this budget tonight on a balanced special education budget. We do get some offsets from circuit breaker and IDE grants that we're expecting level funding on. And then we have smaller assessments in charter schools, school choice, and other outcomes. And I see I'm short on time, so I'll just reference the E&D balance is our excess and deficiency fund. We are only allowed to keep 5% in there. We're pretty much at that. OPEB is our post-employment. Those are our numbers. We're in great shape there with some of the healthiest regional funding in the state. And then this is the numbers I think you really need to see for your voting purposes. Overall assessment to Concord this year without debt is 4.9%. Carlisle's is 3.75%. And the overall increase without debt then is 4.68. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hunter. And we'll open the floor now for questions or comments on Article 12. I don't see anyone in the gymnasium. Do you have anyone?
Yes, I have someone at the pro microphone.
Very good.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green.
Ms. Dritt.
I have a question. Does the budget include planning and budgeting for long-term projects and infrastructure planning for things like replacing the gas furnaces and boilers with heat pumps like we need at one of the elementary schools, and installing solar at the high school, and electrification of the school buses with the charging infrastructure that we need? And if it doesn't, is there a different place where we should go to cause that to happen?
Ms. Dritt, I would note that this budget is the operating budget, and it does not deal with the Concord Public Schools. It deals only with the high school. But Dr. Hunter, do you have anything to add there?
Sure, I'll just mention, and the answer is the same for both districts. We're always exploring alternative funding. The budgets aren't typically able to accommodate those kinds of costs. We have a couple of grant opportunities that we're pursuing. For example, driver's ed. We have one electric car, but the charger's at Ripley. So we have some infrastructure work to do. So we're looking for grants and other options to fund those improvements without competing against the educational program.
Thank you. Anyone else in the auditorium?
Yes, we have another person at the con microphone. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Harold Carmel, 1344 Main.
Mr. Carmel.
The superintendent had mentioned a reduction in the number of pupils. How many, by how much, by what percent has the student body fallen over the last few years? I'm also struck by, are there any per student, the budget numbers are given absolutely very understandably, but cost per student, has that changed over the years? How does our cost per student compare to other similar districts in the state?
Dr. Hunter?
Sure. We're now at enrollment here at the high school of just under 1,200 students. We've been up over 1,300 the last few years. So we're definitely adjusting and allocating staff appropriately. Of course, at a high school, teachers teach 4 sections, so kids are moving all day. And not quite like an elementary school where it can just reduce one teacher and it be quite so one-to-one in terms of enrollment matching. In terms of per pupil cost, we have compared always in our budget presentations to like districts. We are pretty well in the middle of our like districts. I think even with the enrollment declining some because of special education needs, it's offsetting some of the decline in per pupil spending.
Thank you very much. Did you have a follow-up question, sir?
Thinking about that, I think the student body is going down, the budget's going up. It would be nice to have that laid out specifically and explicitly so that we can follow the year-over-year trends in these matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have another person at the pro microphone here in the auditorium.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I understand the need to
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Janine Amaduri, 169 Thoreau Street.
Thank you.
I do understand the need to balance the budget, but one of the savings methods you mentioned concerned me, and that was that the high school was deliberately trying to hire less experienced teachers in order to save money. And I don't think it's possible to maintain the same high quality education if you deliberately hire less experienced teachers. So I wondered if there's any leeway in that.
Dr. Hunter?
I don't want to in any way imply we lower our standards when we're looking at the teacher candidate pool. We are looking for high quality people who are going to bring in what we're looking for in instruction. So money doesn't drive all those decisions. It's a piece of the discussion.
Thank you.
So apparently I have neglected to invite the Finance Committee to the microphone to speak on this article. Mr. Dahlberg. My notes are good, but not perfect.
Thank you. I'm Eric Dahlberg, Chair of the Finance Committee, 121 Finnegan Way. The Finance Committee recommends affirmative action on this article primarily because the budget meets our guideline for fiscal year 26, 3.48%. There was a question about per pupil costs, and I want to flag that we did some analysis on per pupil costs. They are shown on page 105 of your briefing book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dahlberg. Any further questions in the auditorium?
Seeing none out here.
Okay, I see we have someone at the pro microphone here in the gymnasium.
I've just learned after all these years that I can present a point of order. It's regarding...
Could you give us your name and address, please?
Mary Weinberg, Hillside Avenue.
Thank you. What is your point of order?
When you put the time up, when the 45 seconds begins...
For the vote, do you mean?
For the vote. On the last vote, you told us we had 45 seconds, but you opened it up when it was at 38 seconds. So just would love to have that extra few seconds. I don't know if this fits in with point of order, but I don't remember us discussing, and that's your latitude, of how much time you would give us to vote. But the point of order is, at least if we're going to get 45 seconds, if you don't mind coordinating that so we get the full 45 seconds.
Noted. It's a good point. We're all on a learning curve here with our electronic voting. And I will say that the length of time that we leave the voting window open is a function of how long it takes for all the votes that are made to register. Folks had asked yesterday if we could have a timer so that people had a sense of how long, if they were thinking about their vote, they had a sense of how long they had to push the button. So that's why we added the timer. But when that timer expires, if we can see that votes are still coming in, we are not closing the window. We're leaving it open for those last votes to come in. But we'll try and do a better job lining up the start with the opening of the window with the timer. Thank you. Any further questions or comments on Article 12? Seeing none, we are ready for a vote. Could we have the voting screen, please? Okay, and let's open the window first. And Shannon, can you get that timer up for us? Okay, we're good. The window's open. The timer is going. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the window. Well, that passes by a very wide margin, 300 to 26, and I do so declare. Thank you very much. Let's go now to Article 10. We'll have that motion on the screen. This one is the Concord Public Schools operating budget. And we see the motion there to take affirmative action is printed in the briefing book. And this also includes a transfer from free cash, which Dr. Hunter will explain. Could we have a second for the motion, please? I see that we have one. Thank you very much. Dr. Hunter.
Thank you. So the Concord Public School budget is in front of us now. I think it's worth explaining the free cash transfer before we go forward. That is to reimburse the school system for its output in homeless transportation. The reimbursement from the state goes to the general fund, and then it needs to be moved over to the schools. So this will be the case this year and at least until next year, because they run about a year in arrears of the actual expenditures. So that's why that $69,000 is added onto the motion. The Concord Public Schools this year, some things that we noted and have maintained. Again, I won't go through things that are the same as the high school with level of service and all. The two big factors here, and first and foremost, I want to use this opportunity to thank the community. We successfully opened the new Concord Middle School, the Ellen Garrison building at Concord Middle School on February 24th, on time and under budget, and our students have been thriving in those settings since then. So just a huge thank you to this community and all that it did to help us get there and to make it happen. It's been really, really exciting, and there is a ribbon cutting and open house Wednesday at 5 if you'd like to come and get to wander the school yourself. So those costs are all in here. We've been operating 3 schools this year, so we're going to be excited that this budget is just for 1 middle school building. The overall increase in the Concord Public Schools this year is 2.4%, and the middle school consolidation had a piece of that, so we'll outline those savings and how we were able to get to the 2.4 as we make our way through. We had some adjustments at the administrative offices. Again, another increase in software costs because of our cyber attack a year ago. Teaching and instruction, these are the teacher salaries. Normally, this percentage increase is considerably higher than 1.9%. Because of the consolidation of the middle school, we have reduced 5.4 full-time equivalents across a number of categories of employee, because the redundancies are no longer needed and the consolidation has made us more efficient. So that's certainly embedded in here. We've had some real look at supplies and materials and contract services and been able to make some decreases there as well. Other school services, special education transportation, a driver here, and as well as looking at regular ed transportation and other contractual services related to transportation on our big yellow school buses. Fixed charges, this aligns with actuals and insurance primarily. Our property and liability insurance we carry, the town carries health benefits, we carry property insurance, so we had increases there. Out-of-district tuitions, we're in a different place at CPS. Out of over 2,000 students, almost 2,200 students, we have about 16 out-of-district, and that's because of the extensive in-house programming that we've built, and we're really thrilled that kids are staying in our schools and really benefiting. And of course, the entire school benefits from the inclusive opportunities and the culture that that builds. So that's allowing us to really maintain and sustain this number and not have the same issues we're having at the high school. Worth noting here, we have a little less in circuit breaker because we have less kids going out of district, so we have less subsidy coming in, and we do use our federal IDEA grant to support tuitions as well. It is worth noting, and I didn't mention this at the high school, but I'll mention it here, you know, we're watching and listening to the federal discussion going on of grant funding. We've been asked a lot for how much federal funding we have. So at the Concord Public Schools, it's about $670,000, just under $500,000 at the high school. We've been asked what we would do if that were to be go missing. The answer is we'd have to figure that out, just like we did this year with special education tuitions. And we would have to give up some things to be able to make that work. The homeless shelter has definitely had more of a significant impact at the Concord Public Schools just because the families at the shelter have younger children primarily. Willard has been maintaining, educating, and helping to thrive about 40 children from the shelter, and they are all now making their way to their own homes and finding housing in other districts. For this year, that means they had the right to stay at our schools and transport back from wherever they've been getting placed. So we have this really complicated web of transportation going on every day with kids who live now in another community coming back to our schools. And again, we're having to front the funds for that and wait for reimbursement. And that's put quite a bit of pressure on the FY25 Concord budget of about $300,000 or more. So again, sometimes we get forced into reallocating as budgets are living things. We're in alignment with the FinCom budget guideline with an increase of 2.4%. I explained the 69,000, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, the Finance Committee and the Select Board both recommend affirmative action. You can find this article in the briefing book on page 39, and we will hear from Mr. Dahlberg.
Hello again, Eric Dahlberg from the Finance Committee. Briefly, the Finance Committee recommends affirmative action on this article. The budget meets our fiscal year 26 budget guideline of 2.4%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? The floor is open. Come to a microphone. If you have a question, come to any microphone. If you want to speak for or against, go to the appropriate microphone. Anyone in the auditorium?
No one here.
Well, it looks like we're ready to go to a vote. So we will first open the window, and then Shannon, I will ask you to put the timer up there. Okay? Window open? Yeah? Okay. Timer up. Window's open, timer's up. Okay, we will go ahead and close the voting window and see what the vote is. And again, this passes by a very wide majority, 318 to 12. And I do so declare. Thank you very much. We'll go now to Article 11. And you'll find this one in the briefing book at page 40. And you'll see the motion on the screen. This is the Concord Public Schools capital budget. Could we have a second for the motion? Thank you very much. Dr. Hunter.
Thank you. I'm presenting now for the Concord Public Schools pre-K through 8 capital projects. Just want to note that this year we worked very collaboratively with the town and how their capital projects lined up, and we really assessed priorities together. And I think that's brought you a unified approach that really assessed needs on both sides and allowed us to actually meet a number of issues across both schools and town. So our requests today include the following. We have a 15-year-old pickup truck that is in need of replacement. So we're looking for that to happen. We are looking at hybrid and looking at, I don't know that electric will work at the moment given our infrastructure issues, but we definitely will at least consider hybrid. Instructional technology, we need to get back on track with some of our replacement costs at the elementary schools for both devices that students use and the interactive boards that are now very aged in the classroom. So this is a piece of that longer-term plan that will evolve over the next few years. We have copiers that are very much past their useful life. We're probably wishing we weren't calling the service repairs so often. So we're hoping by replacing them, those costs will go down and we will have high-functioning copiers for the next while. We have a need at the Knox Trail Garage where our school buses are housed for a pneumatic lift to make we do our own maintenance on the school buses, so we need to make that safer and more accessible. And we have other smaller capital projects totaled about $33,000. The two larger ticket items this year in Tier 2, we are asking for you to consider funding the irrigation system for the new middle school. That was not included in the building project. So if we don't do it now, we're going to be looking backwards, which we've done a lot of over the years, and want to be sure that we're completing the campus now while the school's coming to completion. We are due to have substantial completion, which means the fields will be seeded and growing by September 15th. And we need the irrigation system to be part of the next summer planning so that it happens while the fields are going in. That cost has been estimated at about $400,000. We would also like to look at Thoreau. We've done a facility assessment about a year ago of all of the elementary schools in Ripley to really identify a capital plan, a long-term capital plan that we've put together. And Thoreau is certainly coming up as the building probably in the more urgent need. The roof is leaking in various pieces, so we'd really like to tackle that before we have a bigger, longer-term issue. Part of that decision will be looking at recommendations and whether repair, replace, what are the best options while we really make design choices and things like that. So this might be the first of a phased approach, but we would like to get started on the Thoreau roof before we have more significant needs. And that is the entirety of the Concord Public School capital requests for a total of $941,570 this year.
Thank you very much. Apologies if I'm repeating myself, but both the Finance Committee and the Select Board recommend affirmative action on Article 11. We'll open the floor to questions and comments. Don't see anyone in the gymnasium. How about in the auditorium?
We have someone at the pro microphone. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, it's Pamela Dritt again. I just want to make a plug to the maintenance van vehicle. A hybrid has all of the disadvantages of a fossil fuel engine and helping finance fossil fuel infrastructure, and none of the major advantages of the electric vehicle and clean energy that we get from that. So it costs more in the long run not to spend it, like Booth's theory of economic inequality, where you spend cheap up front for cheap boots and you end up with wet feet, when if you'd spent $50 for really good boots, you would have them for twice as long for half the cost and have dry feet all the way. Also, if we're going to redo the Thoreau School roof, are we also considering putting solar and battery up there? We could make the roof pay, make money for the school and use that for teachers' salaries. From creating clean electricity, which would benefit all of us, make the electric cost cheaper for everyone in the town, and be a win-win economically. Everything's economics. Please consider that. There are schools right now in the country that do that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dritt. We'll go now to the pro microphone in the gymnasium.
Janet Miller, 1647 Main Street.
Ms. Miller.
I have a question which is related to Pamela's question, which is, have you had any discussion with the CMLP to put in charging at any of the schools? Because I think they would be interested in doing so. So have you spoken to them at all?
Dr. Hunter?
Sure. So I'm actually going to pivot back to the middle school because that's the place we've been most active in that discussion. We just finished the agreement with them to put solar on the roof at the new building. So that's been a work over the last number of years. We have limited solar on the roof already at Willard. That was done when that building was built. We have not engaged with them yet on Thoreau or Alcott because we're in the early phases of this. I think there will have to be discussion of battery and other things. We've learned a lot over the last while as especially the middle school project has rolled out, but we're always happy to talk to CMLP on what the opportunities are.
Thank you very much. I see we have someone approaching the microphone in the gymnasium.
Brian Folds, 33 Riverdale Road.
Mr. Folds.
There is already an infrastructure report with the Sustainability Department. So what your needs are already laid out. We just have to decide to actually execute the plan to put in the chargers and get the EVIP money from the state to do so.
Thank you very much.
Just offering to help.
Anyone else in the auditorium?
We have no one in the auditorium.
We have someone at the pro microphone here, Ms. Weinberg, in the gymnasium.
Mary Weinberg, Hillside Avenue. If I could ask a question, what year was this new Thoreau School built? And the roof, has it ever been repaired since the initial building of it? And if so, when?
Dr. Hunter?
Sure. So the roof is about 20 years old. We've actually been looking at the MSBA state subsidy program, and we're a couple years shy of being eligible for that. So that may be another piece of the decision making. To my knowledge, the only part of the roof that's been replaced is the original 1994 wing where the fire was a few years ago. That entirely was replaced. The flatter roofs are where we're struggling more right now, both in the connection to the 3-story section of the building and on the 3-story building itself.
When was the building built? The new Thoreau School?
1994.
That's what, so I can think that way, and then from there, the original structure.
Yep.
And then after that,
Yep.
which roofs?
Yep.
Which you answered that, but
Yeah,
so
the
1994, we're going back to 1994.
Yeah, the elementary schools are now hitting the 20 to 25-year range. So we're doing our absolute best effort to make sure that we're being preventative in maintenance and really understanding what needs to be done so that we maintain quality, high-functioning facilities for another 25 years.
And one more question. Do you find with new building, roofs and structure out there, the type of roofs you use, do you find new products out there? And also, have you considered what's going to happen with tariffs and prices? Is that also on your drawing board?
Sure. You know, I know more about roofs than I ever did. I know some of the same roof types were put in the new building that are on the Thoreau building. So I think they just age and wear and then need to be replaced. Tariffs are on our mind constantly. We've watched construction costs and other costs escalate enormously. The new middle school we built for about $550 per square foot. Other new construction projects right now are running about $1,000 per square foot or better. So we're always watching because those costs directly impact how far the funds will go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the con microphone.
Rasher Patel, 397 Sudbury.
Mr.
I just
Patel?
have a question about the 400,000. If memory serves me, and I could be wrong, was there some discussion in the past of going to CPC for that money? Was that ever an option?
We went to CPC a year ago for for $250,000 toward the fields at the new school. So this year we've applied to CPC for Thoreau campus improvements for about $400,000. So we've just been weighing priorities year to year.
Okay, but so you didn't go to CPC for the 400?
Not for the irrigation per se.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the auditorium, Mr. Banfield?
No.
All right, looks like we're ready to go for a vote. So let us open the window, please. And Shannon, ready for the timer? All right, begin voting. Okay, we'll close the window now and see what the vote is. All right, this one also passes by a very wide majority, a vote of 302 to 36, and I do so declare. Actually, I think we did need a 2/3 vote on that. It definitely passes by way more than 2/3. My gratitude to the town clerk. All right, we took up Article 13 last night. Articles 14, 15, 16, and 17 are on the consent calendar, and we have dealt with those already. I have no motion under Article 18, and therefore declare that the meeting is taking no action on Article 18. And anyone want to tell me what we're doing with Article 19? We're moving it. We are moving Article 19. That was what that huddle was about that you saw earlier.
Good evening,
All right.
Anthony.
And before you get started, Anthony, let me just note that could we have the motion on the screen? Okay, there's the motion to transfer $1,093,584 from free cash to the General Stabilization Fund. Could we have a second, please? I see that we have one. Thank you. Mr. Ansaldi.
Thank you. Anthony Ansaldi, Chief Financial Officer for the town. Article 19 deals with appropriating funds from free cash to the General Stabilization Fund. What is a General Stabilization Fund? In Massachusetts, the General Stabilization Fund, or you may have heard it as a rainy day fund, for municipalities serves as a reserve account to provide financial stability, flexibility, primarily for unforeseen emergencies. These funds are established under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, and allow municipalities to set aside funds for future needs such as unexpected expenses and long-term capital improvements without relying on immediate tax increases or borrowing. Purpose, again, to provide financial resources for emergencies or unforeseen events that cannot be supported by current general fund appropriations. Funding the General Stabilization Fund. Municipalities can appropriate funds from their annual budget to the Stabilization Fund with a majority vote required to appropriate into the fund and a 2/3 vote to appropriate funds out of the fund. For usage, while the funds can be used for any lawful municipal purposes, they are typically used for emergencies like natural disasters, uninsured losses, revenue shortfalls, or major capital improvements. Target balance, and this is according to the Department of Revenue, DLS, best practices. Communities' target balance for General Stabilization Fund varies by budget, experience, and other available reserves. A recommended goal is typically in the 5 to 7% of the current operating budget range. Bond ratings, ratings like Moody's considers municipal reserves, including stabilization funds, when determining its bond rating, which impacts borrowing costs. Options to funding stabilization funds. There's a couple of ways. Communities can fund stabilization funds by setting aside a portion of their annual budget, typically through a majority vote of town meeting or a city council, and when you have a city, and appropriating funds up to 10% of the previous year's tax levy. Free cash is another way, and communities also have access to free cash, which are the remaining unrestricted funds from operations of the previous fiscal year. This chart, so when the Finance Committee, when we started talking about this, we had a projected free cash, and UFB stands for undesignated fund balance. We like to use that term because free cash is not free and it's not cash. So with that, the estimate, and this was a really conservative estimate that we used, based on the best information we had available at the time, because free cash wasn't certified, was $10,400,000. So thinking back to that other slide where we based it on the current year budget of $138 million plus, so now what we did is that in that next section where it says 5, 6, and 7, we wanted to see what 5%, 6%, and 7% of the current budget, what that would be. So starting with, again, with that undesignated fund balance of $10,400,000, there was 3 articles here at town meeting where youth town meeting was going to appropriate funds if passed. That one was for Article 10, and you heard Dr. Hunter speak to that, and that was for the homeless shelter transportation. Article 25, which originally, when the FinCom was looking at this, the dollar amount that was in the warrant and also, I believe, in the briefing book was $100,000. Article 33, MCI Concord for planning purposes, $250,000. So that means that town meeting was going to be using $419,000 plus if these articles passed. So with that, it left an available net total of our undesignated fund balance of just shy of $10 million, 9.98. It was determined at that point, where we lacked the policy, that sticking in the mid-range of 6%, and that means leaving 6% in our undesignated fund balance, we should leave $8.2 million, which meant there was 1.693 to appropriate to stabilization funds. Article 18 was not moved by the FinCom for reasons that we really didn't have policies dealing with how we were going to handle and fund capital and debt stabilization. So originally, the plan was for $100,000 into a capital stabilization fund, $500,000 into a debt stabilization fund, with the remaining balance of $1,093,584 to go to the general stabilization fund. Since that time, we had free cash certified, and the undesignated fund balance came in certified at $15.8 million, almost 15.9, which is great. Again, keeping to the same formula that we went through in the prior slide, 5, 6, 7%. We analyzed that, taken out the town meetings. Now, the only difference in the town meeting articles is Article 25 was reduced from $100,000 to $83,000. So the amount the town meeting, if those articles passed, would be spending $402,906 of free cash. That left a balance of $15,495,310. With that, again, sticking to that same 6% threshold of keeping that in our undesignated fund balance or free cash, that means the available for stabilization funds would have been $7,208,800. With that, thinking back from the last slide, the $1,093,584 is what the looking for appropriation to the general stabilization fund. That would leave us with a balance of $14,401,726 until June 30th of 25. Then that would become available. That undesignated fund balance would only become available when free cash was certified, which typically happens in the fall. And here's the motion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ansaldi, did you introduce yourself?
I believe I did. I think I started by saying Anthony Ansaldi, Chief Financial Officer for the town.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew who you are. Okay, and you'll see that Mr. Ansaldi went far into the red on his time, and it's because we agreed on the time at an early point before this presentation morphed into this presentation. So we gave him a little latitude. We'll hear next from the Finance Committee, I believe Mr. Kupka.
Don Kupka, 39 Devon Street.
Mr. Kupka.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Finance Committee recommends approval of this article, and I think it may be helpful if we just put it in context that we can all understand, and think that the free cash balance is kind of the balance in the checkbook. And the state recommends that we keep 3 to 4 weeks of expenses in that checkbook. And then at the end of the year, they true it all up and say, guess what? Concord, you actually have about six weeks expenses in there. You should, their policy, their recommendation for best practice is move some of that into a savings account. Why? Well, it's a little easier, more tempting, if you will, to just spend out of the checkbook, right? But if you put it into a savings account for the long term, you're less likely to draw it out for other purposes. And that's basically what a general stabilization fund is. It's intended to be there come hell or high water. And it's something that the ratings agencies look at. We took a look at our peer communities, AAA rated towns, because Moody's is always commenting, your reserves are low, your reserves are low. And sure enough, our reserves are low. All the other AAA rated towns have these. We actually have an account, it just has $5,000 in it. So, I know. So the amount that we're proposing to move into it this year is actually 2.5 days of our expenses as a town. It's not going to really move the needle in a real emergency, but it's something, and it's a good move. It demonstrates good practice, demonstrates that Concord is conservative fiscally and is taking steps to ensure that we remain financially sound. And that's why the Finance Committee recommends this. We took 2 votes on this because we know that the Select Board would like some time to think about the policy or think about what is the proper amount for it. But both times the committee voted to move the article and to recommend affirmative action because I think the general consensus is it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll hear next from the Select Board. Ms. Hartman.
Thank you. Mary Hartman, Chair of the Select Board, speaking on behalf of the Select Board.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We invite the Finance Committee to work with us to take a deeper look to establish policies, targets, and the details around ongoing funding of all of our stabilization funds. We commit to making this one of our FY26 goals and to report back to the town. In the meantime, however, the Select Board unanimously recommends no action on Article 19. We support a defined policy for establishing stabilization funds, and in general, we support stabilization funds earmarked for specific capital projects. For example, at our meeting last night, we all voted to use the Middle School Stabilization Fund to reduce our FY26 tax levy because that fund was established explicitly for that purpose. However, the Select Board believes it is premature to increase other general stabilization funds without an agreed-upon target and an ongoing funding plan. While we understand concerns about the national economic outlook, the town does not rely on state or federal funding and has other reserves to react to shortfalls. The town also has reserves to handle other unusual and unlikely losses, such as our uninsured loss reserve account, and we also have a tradition of using our free cash when we have shortfalls. We believe a plan to increase our general stabilization fund to meet potential emergencies lacks flexibility to actually do so because it requires a 2/3 vote of town meeting to release funds. Emergencies require flexibility. General stabilization funds are not flexible. Also, by design, stabilization funds use current tax dollars to pay future expenses and must be established thoughtfully, else we tax current taxpayers who might not necessarily benefit from the monies when they are eventually spent. Finally, we question the amount requested in this appropriation. We thank the Finance Committee for bringing this to our attention, and we look forward to continue to work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well then, anybody have any questions? The con microphone in the gymnasium, please.
Parashar Patel, 397 Sudbury Road.
Mr.
So
Patel.
the select board is saying that in essence, to take money out of the stabilization fund, you need a 2/3 vote from town meeting, is that correct? And what would it take to take money out of free cash through the course of the year?
That is a majority vote.
But.
Well, actually, we'll let Mr. Endick, it probably depends on what you're spending it on. Mr.
Exactly,
Ansaldi.
thank you.
So once free cash is certified in the fall, it's majority vote of town meeting.
So the notion of using this money for emergencies, that scenario can't, so if a scenario comes up where there's an emergency and you need $2 million, $3 million, in the middle of the fiscal year before town meeting, what does the town do? How do you pay for an expense like that?
You don't have the funds. In my opinion, you don't have the funds, and you wouldn't have them until after free cash is certified.
So the $5,000 that Don was talking about in the.
You can use that.
So then the question is, if that's what this is really for, why couldn't the $1 million plus be deposited in the $5,000 account?
That is exactly what this article is trying to do.
I don't think so, because they're
You don't
saying
think so?
they said you need 2/3 vote at a town meeting to spend the money. But I'm talking about in the middle of the year between town meetings. If you need the cash, where would you get it from?
In any scenario, you would have to have a special town meeting to take money out of free cash or any reserve.
So this isn't truly for true emergencies.
This is for true emergencies.
Well, but I was just
But
told
it's
in a
true
true.
also of free cash, free cash.
Sorry?
But it's also true of free cash. You would need to have a special town meeting with a vote because we are the legislature that appropriates the money.
So, but to be very clear, in true emergencies, between town meetings, we can only spend the $5,000 sitting in the account somewhere, or we can't spend any money?
In true emergency, between, say, July 1st, which is the first day of the fiscal year,
Yep.
and the date in which the free cash balance is certified by the state, the $5,000 is all we could access today. That's right. This year, free cash was certified last month, meaning that for 11 months, Concord had only access to $5,000. Even if we had a special town meeting, we could only access $5,000. If we build up a general reserve and on 2/3 vote in a special town meeting, we'd have access to those funds.
But not at the time you really need it, though. It sounds like there's no mechanism during the time when you truly need it for an emergency that the town has any access to any money. Is that right?
I wouldn't say that the town doesn't have other means as well. The select board mentioned, Mary Hartman mentioned that there are other ways to get funds in an emergency, and that's one of the reasons they'd like to think, more time to think about this.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody in the auditorium?
No, we have no one in the auditorium.
Let's go to the con microphone.
Cynthia Rainey, 80s Hunters Ridge Road. I agree that we need more time to discuss policy on this warrant article. I would like to ask the Madam Moderator if we could get the town manager's opinion on this article.
Ms. LaFleur?
Good evening, Carrie LaFleur, Town Manager, former CFO for the Town of Concord.
And this is why Ms. LaFleur gets the big bucks, because she is the select board's hire. So she's in a really interesting spot. Go ahead, Ms. LaFleur.
I would second that I'm in an interesting spot. So what I will say is free cash is a reserve of the town. It's certified on an annual basis. Neither free cash nor a stabilization fund can be accessed without a town meeting, a vote. As we've talked, free cash is a simple majority. Stabilization fund is a 2/3 majority.
She said all the words in one place, which is what I'm...
Concord's tradition has been to use free cash as its rainy day fund, from my perspective, or its surplus fund. Concord's tradition has been to set up stabilization funds for capital projects. To me, this represents a change in philosophy, and it might be time to change our philosophy. But I think a change in philosophy requires a considered approach. And as you've heard the select board chair mention, the select board has committed to take this work up in fiscal '26. So from my perspective, I don't think putting the money in the stabilization fund at this point in time buys us anything, and my preference would be to be able to take a considered approach and create a new policy before taking action. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaFleur. Let's go to the pro microphone over here.
Marty Plotkin, 54 Francis Street.
Mr. Plotkin.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It seems to me that the funds that the Select Board is referring to are designated for specific purposes, while the intent of this fund is specifically not to be designated for a specific purpose. And I would like to ask the Select Board whether there is there any conceivable policy under which we would not want to have a fund for general unanticipated expenses. I totally agree that there ought to be a plan, but if there is no scenario in which this fund would not be part of that plan, why not go ahead now?
Thank you. Looks like we'll hear from Mr. Howell this time.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark Howell, member of the Select Board. The town has a strong history of planning and funding reserves for defined purposes. What seems to be lacking to us is the defined purpose and the differentiation. The discussion that we've had so far this evening points out that the exact circumstances under which we would want to utilize those forever reserves that a general stabilization fund is meant to represent are not defined by policy. We have offered and expect to engage with the Finance Committee over development of that policy and look forward to understanding exactly how we would use a general stabilization fund. That includes the operating principles that are integrated into the budgeting and guideline process so that we can set a goal for the level that the general stabilization fund should reach, how soon we should reach it, and we can establish and continue to build on our track record as we have with OPEB, as we have with our retirement fund balances, and as we have with previous school stabilization funds, mainly for large capital projects such as school buildings. This is a new idea for Concord, and we're suggesting that we implement it fully through a process that understands those goals, understands that process, and understands how an appropriation to this fund is going to be prioritized against current operating budget needs and other priorities in any given year. We want to be on a plan that is understood and fits into that prioritization that we have to do each and every year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the con microphone here. Oh, looks like Mr. Weber's microphone is not functioning. You know what? Let's go to the other microphone. You stay right there. We'll try and get that fixed. Mr. Gariello?
Greg Goriello, member of the FinCom, but speaking on behalf of myself. So right now, free cash is not flexible, and we're not losing any money by moving it into a stabilization fund here, right? We don't have any guidelines exactly on how to use free cash today, right? The school board comes for it, other people come for it. They can all come out of the stabilization fund if we build it. As Don said, Moody's looks at us and says we have no stabilization fund whatsoever. Anthony has indicated it's $5,000, right? For Concord, that's a ding on our AAA rating. right? So we're not losing money here at all. It's about moving it from one place to the other. We will actually probably benefit from it by getting a better interest rate in an account that we can deal with as opposed to just free cash, which is, again, bad term for it, locked up cash, that we can't invest where we want to. So again, not losing money anywhere here, right? Concord has a history of doing things. You know what? We've also had a history of doing things incorrectly, right? Years ago, we used to pull $1 million out of free cash every year. That's not really advised by the DORI to pull that money out and do that. You can pull it out of a stabilization fund if you have it there, okay? So it's a difference there as well. A lot of towns use this money to fund things. I was talking to a gentleman last night. Littleton does this, and they funded a full fire truck out of $1 million out of their capital or their stabilization fund, which was $5 million because they added to it every year. To the select board's point, yes, we do not have a policy at this point or regarding this, but stuffing money away for a rainy day is a good thing. We can deal with that policy this coming year. And I wholeheartedly believe we should do it or deal with the policy, but we should also get this money into this fund today, because now we have the chance. In 6 months, or once town meeting is over, we don't have the chance anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Gariello. Is that microphone fixed over there? Very
It looks
good.
like, yes. Sven Weber, 50 Belknap.
Mr. Weber.
I'm not really, Conrad, I'm still trying to get the pieces of the puzzle together here. So I lose track about all the different reserve accounts and stabilization accounts and all of that. So we have accounts for pension, we have one for the middle school, which I think will come to the end soon. Then we have the free cash, then we have, so it would be good to have an overview about all the different reserves accounts the town has to get a full picture. And also would be good to understand what are the pros and cons. And now I just learned that there might be a difference in interest income if you do it on one side, but the trail on the other end seems to be that we need a 2/3 vote to get the money out of the stabilization fund. Then again, I tend to think it seems to be complicated for emergencies, because if emergency fails, if we have another stormwater issue, which costs $1 million, I necessarily don't foresee us calling a special town meeting for that and trying to get 2/3 vote for fixing that, and how quickly can we react on a real emergency. So I struggle with all the pieces of the information at the moment. It's not that I'm opposed to it. It's more, do we in the room have a clear overview about the reserve situation in a whole, what different mechanisms are, and how we want to manage that? And so I struggle with that. And I don't know how to press the clicker yet. But I think this seems to be more kind of a planning, and I would encourage to potentially take that back and come back next year
And
with a
you
full plan.
are out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ansaldi, is there anything that you're able to give by way of overview, or is that a more complicated undertaking? An overview of what do we have for stabilization funds and reserves?
So prior to town meeting, we had a middle school stabilization fund, which had just a little bit over $5 million. You appropriated $1 million using that to offset the debt for the middle school. You have, and then the $5,000 in general stabilization fund, and then the free cash, which I went through earlier of what we have in free cash available until June 30th, and then again is available to us after it's certified in the fall.
Thank you very much. What about the deficiency fund that the select board noted? What is that? I see the town manager coming.
So we have an insurance reserve fund that also has $3 million in there.
Okay, and what is that, an insurance reserve fund?
That could be used for, for example, insurance shortfall, if the budget expenses became higher on the insurance line, if there was an unforeseen claim that we had to pay out, things of that nature.
Understood. Okay, so it has to do with insurance. Let's go to the con microphone.
Thanks, Madam Moderator. Brian Taylor, 670 Lowell Road. I'm a little confused at what button to push as well on this article. What I'm trying to understand is, what is the urgency here? We already have access to free cash if we need it. And do we have an issue with Moody's at the moment? Because if we don't have necessarily a ratings issue with Moody's at the moment, what's the rush?
Mr. Kopka?
Just very briefly, Moody's has continually flagged this as an issue. So we feel that it'd be a little irresponsible of us not to recommend action on it.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Flagging is one thing, but doing something is another. So I'm just trying to understand, do we really need to do this?
We haven't had a rating downgrade yet, but if we wait until that happens, I think then we'll be.
But they usually telegraph that, or at least instigate some type of overture that it might be coming. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what are we talking about right now?
I guess I'd say that the Finance Committee doesn't think it would be wise to wait for something of that sort. We did a comparison of Concord's reserves with all the other AAA-rated towns, and we're at the bottom of the list. So we think we need to raise that flag as a part of our responsibility to this body.
I see that Ms. Hartman has come over.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Brian. I agree that the market, which we know is very risk adverse, gives the town of Concord a AAA bond rating, and that's not in jeopardy. And they use many factors to figure that out. One is our reserves, not just our general stabilization reserve, our free cash, our OPEB, our retirement funds, our uninsured losses, and all these other reserves that we don't really, right now, have a good list for. So we have a AAA bond rating. Our general stabilization fund might be lower than other towns, but our AAA bond rating is solid. And it's, again, it's a function of many factors, not just your one reserve account.
Thank you very much. Let me ask, is there anyone in the auditorium who wishes to speak?
I'd like to say that we had someone standing there very patiently, and they seem to have sat down. I'm going to give them an opportunity to stand back up if they'd like to. Nope, we're good. We seem to be good.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the con microphone.
Abraham Fisher, 400 Hayward Mill Road.
Mr. Fisher.
I have a question. How irrevocable are our choices here? Clearly, if we don't put the money in the fund, we can decide to put it in the fund a year from now. If we put the money in the fund, can we decide a year from now to take it out, throw it back into the general town reserves?
Mr. Ansaldi?
To answer those both questions, yes, and on the second part, it's a 2/3 vote at next year's town meeting.
Thank you. Con microphone.
Parashar Patel, 397 Sudbury. Just a question. Can we make a motion to amend this to make the transfer contingent upon the select board adopting a policy?
You can. You would need to sit down with Mr. Lawson and get that written down and get 3 copies of it so that we could have that in order. And it could
I hate to say this as a former member of FinCom, and I see people shaking their heads, but why not? Wouldn't that achieve both objectives? We don't have to wait till next year. And at the same time, spur them with some action.
Right. Okay. All right. So we have 2 two comments on the notion of your amendment without having looked
I
at
don't
it.
want to make one right now. I'm
No,
just asking
I
a
understand, I understand. We have two comments. One is that town council is of the view that the legal effect of such an amendment would be advisory only because it is completely up to the select board whether or not it adopts a policy. And Mr. Ansaldi notes that if there was still a contingency pending when the free cash certification expired, then we would not be able to make the transfer.
All right, I think I've made up my mind then. Thank you.
We now have someone standing at the
pro microphone
here.
Oh, yes, let's go to the auditorium then. Thank you very much, Mr. Banfield.
Proceed.
Lisa Resnick, 45 Laurel Street.
Ms. Resnick.
So I'm for this, and the reason is I'm concerned about voting against a FinCom recommendation. In their report, it said that the financial situation in Concord is precarious, and my own personal finances, you know, I would be doing everything I can to shore up the financial status. So it sounded, I was all set for pro until hearing the select board's position, which got very confusing. But so I wanted to clarify, if we vote against it, the risk would be that we'd have to get a 2/3 vote instead of a simple majority to use the funds. And secondly, process could still be considered, but only after we moved $1 million from basically the checking account to the savings account. Do I have that right?
No, if we don't act on this motion, we simply wouldn't put any money in the stabilization fund, and then the money would remain in free cash, and moving money out of that would require a majority vote at town meeting.
And we'd still be flagged with Moody's as, you know, concerning, risking lowering our rating.
That one's above my pay grade. Anybody else want to answer it?
I would just say that Moody's considers many factors, and our ability to raise taxes is one of the things I think that gives them a lot of comfort. That said, we are getting close to our Prop 2.5 limit as well. I think that is another variable in this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the pro microphone here.
Madam Moderator, Eric Van Loon, Martha's Point Road.
Mr. Van Loon.
Former moderator, but not speaking for the moderator, obviously. I think we're all faced with the dilemma that a lot of people that we like and respect on both sides of this seem to have arguments, but they're complicated. And by venturing in, this is clearly above my pay grade. But what it seems to me is if we vote yes on this, we're in essence creating a savings account. We're putting $1 million into it, and it's there. And during the year that it's there, there'd be an opportunity for the select board to come up with a policy of the conditions under which we're going to take it out, if any. But that there's, in that sense, very little downside to just going ahead, other than, obviously, instead of having 5,000 in there, which is nothing, we have $1 million in a rainy day fund and count on our select board to figure out over the next 12 months the criteria for removing it. So I urge that we go ahead and vote yes. If I hadn't spoken, I would have called the question, but I know that's out of order, so I won't.
It is out of order, you're right. Well, Mr. Dahlberg, yes?
Thank you. Eric Dahlberg from the Finance Committee. One point that I want to clarify First things first, I would not have guessed that this article would have so much discussion. It's a good thing.
There's always a sleeper.
So we deliberated on this last night up in the Learning Commons. We elected to defer action on this until right before town meeting. And one of the key points in our deliberations was an understanding that free cash is not accessible for significant portions of the year. After June 30th, free cash is not accessible by anybody until it is certified by the state the following year. So that's really a key part of our rationale for wanting to fund the stabilization fund. If that understanding is incorrect, I invite clarification because that's a really important point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Con microphone.
This is a question. David Allen, Heathbridge Road. I had a thought, but I really have to ask, thanking Mr. Dahlberg, do we know when the state will certify free cash? In other words, what's the period of time that, what's history on that matter?
Go ahead, Mr. Kopka.
The fiscal year closes on June 30th, and then there are outstanding obligations and revenues still to come in. And so it takes, I would say, a minimum of a quarter for that process to play out. And then the state has to go through, and I don't think they do a full audit, but they certify the balance. This year, it was certified on May 15th. So from July 1st until May 15th, free cash was not a source of funds in an emergency. That was an unusual circumstance, but it's our most recent data point, whereas money that is in a reserve is always available.
And of course, that's important. But if I could ask, that was the experience this past year. What's the last 5 or 10 years suggest with respect to the state's behavior in this regard? In other words, let's get a sense of a trend.
Carrie, would it be correct to say it's typically a quarter, 3 months or so from the, if the year closes on June 30th, we typically have free cash certification in October?
Well, let's ask Ms. Loeffler to address the question. Thank you.
So not before October 1st, but typically by the end of the calendar year. And again, we have to have a town meeting in order to access it.
All right. So between a quarter and a half of the year, the money's basically not available. I rose because one of the interventions either suggested or said the town finances were precarious, and that was in favor of proceeding here. That's a strong statement, and I need to ask, please, since FinCom is the source for this information, are the town finances precarious? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to answer that, Mr. Dahlberg or Mr. Yes?
Eric Dahlberg from the Finance Committee. Thanks for the question. The town faces significant financial challenges, as I shared in my opening statement last night. Spending is growing, and that growth is accelerating, especially in the last few years. It's fueled primarily by debt, which has reached new highs in recent years, both the absolute total dollars we're borrowing and debt service payments. And of course, we all know, hand in hand with that, taxes continue to climb, 5.0% per year on a compound annual growth basis. So yes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. At the same time, we've heard a view from the other side of the room suggesting perhaps otherwise. I'd invite a response from the other side of the room. Should it be somewhat different? Thanks very much.
Thank you. We'll go next to the, do you wish to speak? Okay. We'll hear from Mr. Howell.
Fortunately, we get to make the decisions about town finances right here in this room on an annual basis. And we tend to do that based on our traditions and our process and policies. Our concern remains that we are establishing a savings account, and that savings account should have predetermined rationale for deposits and withdrawals. I have, in previous open meetings with the Finance Committee, asked the questions, how would we prioritize the funding if we're going to establish this general stabilization fund, run it up to 5 or 6% as presented in the, under what conditions are we achieving that goal? And how would we prioritize those against the operating budget needs of CPS, CCRSD, and the town in future years? We have been able to maintain a AAA bond rating for a very long time, the 26 years that I've been in this community, and I see no reason why we should be unable to do that unless we start becoming arbitrary about how we move our funds around. So we're suggesting that we be deliberate about that. We're suggesting that we should be very cautious about our expenditures of free cash. I'm going to stand here in a future article and ask you to spend free cash on an important initiative, and we have traditionally done that. However, we don't see the need to create this fence around these particular funds at this time, and we don't see that as having a material effect on our rating.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go to the auditorium next, and I'm also going to point out that this is complicated, and we're in a particularly unusual situation because we have our advisory boards at odds with each other. So I recognize that this bears some conversation, but the conversation's been going for 45 minutes now, so I just will ask people to just consider whether the question you have has already been asked or the point you wish to make has already been made. Let's go to the auditorium.
From the pro microphone, please.
Ellie Garvey, 25 Damon Street. I'd like to call the question, please.
Well then, 45 minutes, I guess we'll call the question. This is a non-debatable motion. It requires a second. Do I have one? I see that I do. It requires a 2/3 vote. We're using our paper slips for this vote. All those in favor of calling the question, that means we finish debate and we go to a vote. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Okay, so that passes by 2/3 for sure. In the gymnasium, what does it look like in the auditorium?
It's unanimous here in the auditorium.
Very good. We are ready then to go to a vote. So, can we please put the voting screen up? Thank you. And can we please have our window open? And we'll put the timer up. And as soon as that timer appears, you're good to vote. All right, let's close the window and see what our vote is. So it passes by a vote of 198 to 154. We only needed a majority vote on this, and I do so declare. Okay, so we've addressed Articles 20 and 21 on the consent calendar. We will now proceed to Article 22. Thank you very much. You can see the motion on the screen here. This is a motion to establish retirement board stipends. Can I have a second for the motion, please? Thank you very much. I see that we have one. Both the Select Board and the Finance Committee, thank goodness, have the same recommendation on this, and it's for affirmative action. And we'll hear first from Mr. Oh, well, actually, who's going to present? All right, okay, Mr. Fulton and Mr. Ansaldi.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Peter Fulton, 31 Winthrop Street in West Concord. Thank you for taking the time here. I hope this will not be as extensive. What we're looking for here is retirement board stipends. Initially, the retirement board members served without compensation, but were reimbursed for expenses or loss of salary incurred through board service. Over time, to better compensate for their responsibilities, stipends were introduced. The amendment to the Mass General Laws, Chapter 32, Section 20, which introduced stipends ranging from $3,000 to $4,500 per year for elected and appointed members of city, town, county, regional, district, or authority retirement board, was formalized in 2011 through Section 34 of Chapter 176 of the Acts of 2011. Legislative change was designed to recognize the significant fiduciary responsibilities undertaken by retirement board members, including the management of substantial public pension funds and ensuring compliance with complex regulations. By providing a modest stipend, the amendment aimed to attract and retain qualified individuals to these critical roles, acknowledging the time and expertise required. The stipend provision requires acceptance by appropriate local legislative body town meeting. Of the 104 retirement systems in the state, 74 of them provide stipends to their board members, which is in fact 71% of all boards. Many retirement system funds are invested in PRIM, managed by the Pension Reserve Investment Management Board, which oversees the Pension Reserve Investment Trust, PRIT fund in Massachusetts. The Concord Retirement Board has 47.7% asset allocation to PRIT and actively manages the remaining 52.3% of the approximate $240 million in assets. The funds for the stipends come out of the retirement system's operating budget, which is taken from the investment income received. Why should the retirement board receive stipends, and what is the difference between them and other boards, committees? Legal authority and structure, financial responsibility, training and oversight, and board impact. We are governed by the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32. Our oversight agency is the Public Employee Retirement Administration, referred to as PERAC. We have fiduciary responsibility for managing Concord's retirement system. Members can be appointed, elected, or ex officio, for example, the town accountant. Often includes paid staff and may provide stipends to board members. Other volunteer boards, examples, planning boards, zoning boards, cultural councils, conservation commissions, etc. They're governed by local bylaws or state statutes, not Mass General, Chapter 32. Typically advisory or regulatory without fiduciary responsibility for large funds, and usually fully volunteer with no financial compensation. Financial responsibility of the retirement board, we actively engage in investing and managing approximately $240 million in the pension fund by diversifying the investments of the system to minimize the risk of large losses. We make investment decisions, approve benefits, and ensure actuarial funding. It can impact the long-term financial health of municipalities. Financial responsibility of other volunteer boards, they usually have no direct control over larger financial assets, and budget influence is generally limited to recommending or advising. And one of our training and oversight, many of our training and oversight requirements are to complete mandatory fiduciary training through PERAC. We're subject to audits, ethic rules, and open meeting laws. We're legally liable for breaching fiduciary duties, and a breach occurs when a fiduciary fails to act in the best interest of the beneficiaries, such as by engaging in self-dealing, making imprudent investments, or failing to disclose information. Training and oversight of other volunteer boards. Training varies by board and community, usually only subject to open meeting laws and standard ethics rules. The retirement board impact that directly affects the retirement benefits of public employees, firefighters, police, non-teaching school staff, etc. Their decisions can have significant financial consequences for individuals and local budgets. And other volunteer boards, the impact may be substantial, for example, zoning decisions, but not tied to individual financial security or long-term investment oversight. Thank you for taking the time on this. I move that the town take affirmative action on Article 22. I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fulton. We will open the floor to questions and comments. Anybody in the auditorium?
Yes, Ms. Dritt.
Hi, Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green. I have a few quick questions.
Why don't you ask them all and we'll get the answers.
Thank you. Why did you pick the high end instead of like the middle or the low end? And I understand that although you do have a personal fiduciary responsibility, you also have the same kinds of insurance protections that those responsibilities typically have. And what kind of investment philosophy do our people have for that? For instance, do our funds have fossil fuel investments?
Ms. Dritt, I'm going to stop you on that one because that's beyond the scope of the article.
Well, I wouldn't want to pay somebody that wasn't going to do that, personally.
Town meeting doesn't get to make that choice, sorry. Can you answer the questions, though, Mr. Ansaldi, about the range and so on?
Sure. Again,
And the
Anthony
insurance.
Sorry, Madam Moderator. Anthony Ansaldi, Chief Financial Officer. The reason that the board decided to go with the hires is because the size of pension boards and pension systems vary, and it depends on what their philosophy is. A lot of pension systems will just invest with PRIT, so they don't have to do any of the active investing and working with our financial advisors. Concord does it a little different, and we've been pretty successful, ranging from about 6 to 7% return on our money. So with that, there's a lot more work that has to get done, and with that, that's why we determined to go with the higher amount.
And can you speak to the insurance question?
Well, the board has insurance. It doesn't have insurance if we make improper, as one of the slides said, unethical or some other breach of duty, then we would personally liable.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the auditorium?
No.
I see we have one speaker approaching the microphone in the gymnasium.
Ronald Bernard, 83 Wright Road.
Mr. Bernard?
Just a question. How many members are on the board?
There is 5 members on the board. There's Brian Whitney, who's elected from the retirees and the current employees. There's myself, that's appointed by the select board. There's Peter Fulton, who's also elected by the retirees and by active members. There's Richard Delory, who's our town accountant, who's the ex officio. And then there's what we call a fifth, or what the law calls a fifth member, where we have Concord resident Eric Macy, and he is voted on by the 4 members of the board, so we have a total of 5.
Okay. Just to clarify my own ignorance, is this $4,500 for the entire board, or is that per person?
It's per person.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Anybody else in the auditorium?
No.
Looks like we've got one. Go ahead.
Phil Posner, 223 Lostbrook Road.
Mr. Posner?
This is just a question. Can the proponent of the article tell us what the performance of the PRIT is versus the performance of the investment funds that are managed by the board, please?
So, yeah, that's kind of beyond the scope too, but if you know. They really don't know.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we have the voting screen up, please? Let's open the window. And let's get our timer up. Okay, voting window is open. Okay, let's close the window and see what the vote is. Okay, it passes by a vote of 205 to 115. That only required a majority vote, and I do so declare. We'll now proceed to Article 23. But before we do, I realize we didn't actually get a vote on our preliminary motion to take up no new business after 9:30 tonight. So Ms. Hartman makes that motion that we take up no new business after 9:30. We'll use our paper slips for this. All those in favor? Thank you very much. All those opposed? Oh, we got a couple of people who want to stay late, huh? Okay.
It's unanimous over here, huh?
Well, it passes by a broad majority here. So we will take up no new business after 9:30.
Point of order?
Yes?
Madam Moderator, I observed that at the end of the 45 seconds when you closed the vote, there were still votes being counted. In this case, it didn't matter, but I would suggest that if you're going to, the 45-second limit should be, please don't vote after that. But then you still have to wait till the votes stop trickling in. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, it looked like it had stopped to me, but I understand. All right, so Article 23. You have the motion on the screen. Dr. Tilley moves that the town take affirmative action on Article 23 is printed in the warrant. Could we have a second, please? Thank you very much.
Mira Tilley, 65 Woodland Road, Chair of the Board of Assessors.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to invite Army Specialist Dick Krug to join me. Local veteran.
And our Veteran Affairs Officer, I think, right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Dick. I'm here today to recommend affirmative action on Article 23, the HERO Act. The HERO Act is a tax exemption for veterans adoptable by local towns like Concord under Mass General Law. The goal of this article is to determine whether the town will accept the provisions of Chapter 178 of the Acts of 2024, referred to as the HERO Act, property tax exemption for veterans in the town of Concord. Briefly, these are additional monies and tax exemptions for veterans. The additional monies will come from the overlay account. If accepted, this will begin on fiscal year 2026, and going forward, the additional monies are not reimbursed from the state. It will come from the town. The Session Law, Acts of 2024, Chapter 178, which is accepted, would increase the amount of tax exemption granted to disabled veterans, beginning in fiscal year 2026, on their domiciles under Clause 22 and 22A through F annually by a cost of living adjustment determined by the Department of Revenue based on the Consumer Price Index. The exemption is currently $400 as determined by the state. Our exemption amount is $800, as determined by a town meeting vote to double the exemption. If the cost of living adjustment is 5% for fiscal year 2026, then the increased exemption amount would be $40 for a total of $840 for fiscal year 2026. Here is the HERO Act cost to the town. Currently, we have 49 qualifying Clause 22 service-connected disabled veterans. 35 applicants of Clause 22 would see a $40 increase from last year. 14 applicants of Clause 22E would see a $100 increase from last year. All additional cost to the town would come out of the town overlay account. To summarize, I move that the town take affirmative action on Article 23 as printed in the warrant.
Thank you very much. Are you able to tell us what the overlay account is?
I'm going to rely on my colleagues to answer that question. The overlay account.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, what's the overlay account?
Madam Moderator, can I invite Meredith Stone to give a more complete answer?
You sure can.
Thank you.
Still have the question.
Good evening. I'm Meredith Stone, the town assessor. The overlay account is monies put aside from the tax rate to fund exemptions, abatements, and any other inconceivable things that can happen with the tax rate.
Thank you very much. We'll open the floor now to questions and comments. I will note that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 23. Is there anyone in the auditorium?
No, there is not.
All right. Looks like we are ready for a vote. Could we have the voting screen, please? And can we open the window? And then Shannon, can you get us the clock? Okay, the window is open. Please vote. Wait a few more minutes. We'll wait a few more minutes and see if there's any more votes. I mean, a few more seconds. Sorry. All right, that looks good. Let's close the window. And I see that this passes by a vote of 303 to 19, and I do so declare. Thank you very much. We've addressed Article 24 on the consent calendar, and we'll now proceed to Article 25. This one is the transfer of the Peabody School, now that it's not a middle school anymore, and the appropriation of funds to maintain it. You see the motion on the screen that Ms. Hartman moves to transfer the amount of $83,000 from free cash as pointed in the warrant. Note that that number is less than the number that was in the article. Could we have a second for the motion, please? Thank you very much. Ms. LaFleur.
Thank you. Carrie LaFleur, Town Manager. Article 25 requests the town meeting authorize the transfer of the Peabody School property and appropriate $83,000 from free cash to cover the building's carrying costs for fiscal 26. At special town meetings in 2022 and 2023, the town appropriated funds for the construction of the new middle school. The project included 3 distinct elements: construction of the new buildings and fields, to demolish the existing Sanborn School, and then to surplus the Peabody School property. The Peabody School property consists of 3 parcels: 1231 Old Marlborough Road, which is the school site, which is about 8 acres, 78 Old Pickard Road, which is Cushing Field, and that's 9.96 acres, and 688 Powder Mill Road, which is the site of the school's septic system, and that's 2 acres. Together, these parcels total about 20 acres. When municipal buildings are commissioned, they are placed under the care, custody, management, and control of a specific municipal authority. In the case of school buildings, care, custody, management, and control is given to the school committee, who hold this authority until such time as the building is no longer needed for educational purposes. With the opening of the Ellen Garrison building at Concord Middle School, the Peabody School property is no longer needed and therefore can be surplused. Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15A establishes a process to transfer a municipal property. This process requires a vote of the school committee and then a vote of town meeting to complete the transfer. In this case, the school committee took its vote on February 4, 2025, and we are here this evening asking that town meeting take its vote as well. The future use of the Peabody School property is yet undetermined, but the town has committed to undertake a comprehensive process to review its land and building assets, some of which are shown here on this slide, to determine best future use. This work will be conducted by a new land use working group appointed by the Select Board. In addition to the property transfer request, we are also seeking an appropriation of $83,000 from free cash to cover the building's carrying costs for fiscal '26. These carrying costs detailed here on the slide include utilities, insurance, minor maintenance, and the estimated legal expenses the town works through potential reuse options. We ask for this additional appropriation as these items represent an additional expense over and above the town's fiscal year budget. By keeping this funding appropriation in its own warrant article, we're able to provide maximum transparency, and then if there are any funds left over at the close of this process, they can be returned to the town. On this slide, we show the expenses associated for the building, both at full and partial occupancy. For fiscal '26, the town's intent is to maintain some level of occupancy, but not full occupancy of the building. On behalf of the town staff, I ask for your support of Article 25 to transfer the Peabody School property and to authorize the building's carrying costs for fiscal '26. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will note that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 25, and you will find an explanation of the Finance Committee's recommendation on page 117 of the briefing book. And we'll hear next from Mr. Howell.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark Howell for the Select Board. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 25. The transfer of the properties associated with the Peabody building is necessary before any reuse of them can be planned. A major goal of the Select Board in the coming year is to create a plan for several properties, including, as you saw on the slide, MCI, Peabody, 2229 Main Street, through the formation of the Land Use Working Group, which will begin shortly after the conclusion of this town meeting. The goal of this effort is to optimize the use of all town properties and achieve operating efficiencies and support goals such as increased housing. While this effort is underway, the Peabody building needs to be maintained and protected. The use of free cash for this purpose is appropriate because the cost of the building maintenance during this planning period is a one-time transitional expense. Once a new purpose is determined, regular budgeting will be appropriate again. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 25.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howell. We'll now open the floor to questions and comments. I don't see anyone at a microphone in the gymnasium. How about in the auditorium?
There is nobody here as well.
All right, then, I think we are ready to proceed to a vote on this article. Could we have the voting screen, please? Thank you. Could we open the voting window? And could we have the timer? Thank you. The window's open. Please vote. We'll give it a couple seconds to see if anything else trickles in. All right, let's close the window. Okay, that passes near unanimously by a vote of 314 to 9, and I do so declare. We will next proceed to Article 26, which was removed from the consent calendar. There is a handout for this, which was in the cafeteria. The motion is being moved as written in the handout. Could we have a second? Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Megan Zamudo, and I am the Deputy Town Manager. Article 26 seeks to update the town's general bylaw regarding land leases. The proposed amendment would allow the town manager, with select board approval, to enter into land leases for up to 30 years, extending the current 10-year limit. In the handout, you will also see another update to this bylaw in paragraph B. This change ensures consistency with the expanded authority granted in paragraph A. This general bylaw amendment supports investment in critical infrastructure. At the 2024 town meeting, the town voted to pursue a cell tower at the landfill. While navigating this procurement process this year, we heard concerns from vendors about negotiating a 10-year lease term due to high upfront costs of permitting and construction. Longer lease terms are tools to attract partners who will make long-term investments in town. I think a couple slides behind here. Thank you. This amendment allows for timely action on priority projects. By updating the bylaw, the town will have the flexibility to negotiate and execute long-term lease agreements between town meetings, enabling a more nimble response to municipal needs, especially for complex multi-year projects like expanding cell coverage, which is a town-wide priority. Also, this amendment provides consistency with existing authority. This amendment aligns the land leasing bylaw with the town's existing bylaw for municipal buildings, which already permits the town manager and select board to approve leases for up to 30 years without town meeting action. We encountered challenges with the current bylaw over the past year while working to lease town property in support of a key town goal. This article seeks to align the leasing of land with the existing bylaw for municipal buildings and provide greater flexibility to advance priority projects in town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will note that the Select Board recommends affirmative action on this article. Do we have questions or comments from the floor? I see we have someone approaching the con microphone in the gymnasium.
Don Kopka, 39 Devon Street. I have a question.
Would this article permit the town manager to execute a lease for something that hasn't been approved at town meeting? You mentioned the cell tower at the landfill, which the town meeting voted for. Would it authorize the town manager to execute a 30-year lease for a cell tower in a location that town meeting hasn't voted for?
Ms. Zamudo? Oh. We have town
Yeah, I'm
council
just gonna
coming.
bring.
Madam Moderator, Mina Macarius from Anderson and Krieger, Town Council. The town manager would not on her own be able to execute leases under this provision. It's the town manager with the approval of the select board. So just first clarification. So it'd be a select board vote. In terms of location, it would depend on the purposes for which the land is acquired or exists today. For instance, if land is in open space or parkland, which is the majority of open land that towns typically own, the town may not be able to do that because of Article 97, which is a state constitutional protection. So you may still need town meeting approval. However, if the land was acquired for a purpose and that is permitted and that the lease is consistent with that purpose, there would not need to be a return to town meeting for the specific authorization of that lease.
So if I'm following correctly, this would allow the town manager with concurrence from the select board to execute a 30-year lease without consulting town meeting in some circumstances.
In circumstances where the land is already allowed to be used for that purpose, correct.
Okay. Allowed by zoning?
No, excuse me, through you, Madam Moderator. Allowed as a matter of how the land was acquired and the purposes for it. So the town, to acquire land, to actually make it part of the town, you would need a 2/3 vote of town meeting, typically. Unless it was donated, it would be majority, or it's donated to the Conservation Commission. When land is acquired, it has a purpose associated with it. If it's acquired for general municipal purposes, then yes, the select board would be able to lease it for up to 30 years without returning to town meeting. The other properties that may have a purpose already set out for them that has not been changed, as you just did, for instance, with the Peabody land, well, excuse me, you didn't change the purpose, you changed the custody. But for instance, I'll use the Peabody land as an example, actually. The Peabody open space that is next to it could not simply be leased out for a long-term lease because that is public open space. It would require a 2/3 vote of the town meeting. It would also require legislative action, 2/3 vote of both houses of the state legislature. The school building has been declared surplus. The building itself could already be leased for 30 years. Land outside the school building could, in theory, depending on the deeds to the building, be leased for purposes that are consistent with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the pro microphone now.
Okay, yeah, I'm just asking a question. Mark Galis, 62 Prescott Road.
Mr. Galis.
Okay, I have 3 specific questions. One of them is, because the existing and proposed language doesn't change it, authorizes the 10-year lease process inclusive of any renewal, extension, or option provisions. That is not sufficient to satisfy the needs of longer lease, so that's my question 1. Question 2 is, if this passes, does that mean, for example, that a future town manager and a future select board with a vote of 2 members of 3 present, constituting a quorum of the select board and a simple majority of the 3 members present, those 3 people would be able to commit the town to a 30-year lease? That's my second question. And the third one is, if this is, is this about an immediate need for a kind of a utility purpose lease, or an idea of doing lots more leasing of town land for any, legally authorized purpose over the next 5, 10, 20 years? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think when we're talking, the first question is about, is the 10-year sufficient? And I can tell you, we have negotiated a lease with a cell phone tower company, Wireless Edge. And that lease is a 10-year lease that has 3 5-year options for renewal, if that is allowed by the town bylaws. Right now, that is not allowed by the town bylaws. So we have a 10-year lease with a tower company. I will say that our tower company needs to sublease space on that tower for carriers. And the industry standard for carriers is to have less risk and more ability to know their status with a lease. So if this company, if the cell tower company has a challenge subleasing to carriers, that will delay the project. So if this doesn't pass this evening, we may come back next year with a new lease for town meeting, or it's possible that they could negotiate it, but what we're hearing is that is a concern that's come up. The second question is asking, I think, about in the future, if the select board and the town manager approve a lease. I think the quorum question, I believe if there is an affirmative vote by the select board to support a town manager recommendation for the lease, that would carry for the second question. And third, is this a question about a utility or an idea of more leasing in the future? As I said, this came up when we were trying to pursue the town meeting's direction for self-service in town. That's a critical priority for the town right now. This is the main use that we have in mind, but we're also looking at, how else can we solve this problem in the community? How can we look into the future? So that was the thought process behind this amendment.
Thank you very much. We will now go to the con microphone.
Hi, Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road.
Ms. Galis?
Thank you. I think it's a bad idea to use one case to make such a general bylaw change. We might very well like our current select board and our town manager, as I do in general. But that doesn't mean we necessarily trust any future officials. We have had, problematic situations in the past with other officials. And also the cell tower issue, I know it is contentious among some parties, and it's kind of, I think it's really wrong to give up legislative rights for this one situation. I think let the business community adjust to our needs and our legal structure here, and we shouldn't really bend over backwards for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me ask if there's anyone in the auditorium waiting to speak.
There is now. Ms. Dritt, can you speak?
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green. Would we be able to, for example, lease the Peabody School long-term and thereby retain ownership of the land? Other than selling it, if we sell it, we lose control of it completely forever.
Ms. Dritt, are you asking whether if the bylaw is amended, could the Peabody School be leased for 30 years? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
And wouldn't that be a good thing?
Oh, well, only with the approval of the, I got town council here. I'm about to get my comeuppance.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, you're correct, but for the wrong reason.
Oh.
That's why.
I'll take it.
So whether or not you change the bylaw, the Peabody School could be leased for 30 years because it is a lease of a public building, and leases of public buildings are allowed for 30 years under state law. Part of the rationale that Ms. Zamudo explained earlier is to make these two things consistent between buildings and lands.
Thank you very much.
Can you give us one other example beside the cell tower where you might need this then? I'm confused.
This is the main example that came up this year, but there may be opportunities in the future to meet town needs that have been identified in master plans in Vision Concord 2030 through a leasing opportunity. And this amendment will give the community the flexibility to enter into those agreements between town meetings.
But like an example.
The one example I have for you today is the cell service.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the pro microphone.
Mary Weinberg, Hillside Avenue. 2 questions regarding 2 particular properties, both on Harrington Avenue. Over 30 years ago, I believe the town entered into an agreement with the Marshalls that when the family stopped farming that, the town would then gain the land. And I don't know if the agreement at the time, I thought it was to include in the future it will be low-income housing, but I'm not sure about that. So 2 questions. If the agreement then over 30 years ago was when the Marshall family leaves the farm, if it did include low-income housing, would we then, the citizens of the town, not have any say if we vote for this? The selectmen and the town manager, whoever that is at the time, would decide exactly what that whole complex was to be, who the developer that was responsible for it. Would we have no say in it? I'm assuming from what I hear about it, we wouldn't. That it would be up to the selectmen, which could win by 1 vote, and the town manager. So this is the Marshall Farm I'm talking about.
Yeah, we'll let town council respond to this one.
I don't either. Madam Moderator, this is part of what I was getting at earlier with specific properties have specific restrictions. So I'm answering without having the benefit of having that in front of me. For instance, if there's an agricultural restriction on the farmland, then no, the town would have to abide by that restriction. If the town was looking to develop for affordable housing, in our experience, having done leases following town meeting for affordable housing, 30 years would usually not be sufficient. So town meeting approval would be needed to sell the property. It would be needed to lease it for more than 30 years. So again, it's really fact specific. But it would depend on the use for which the land was acquired.
The whole agreement was eventually when they left for affordable housing to be there.
Okay, Ms. Weinberg, that doesn't actually bear on the bylaw. That's a very specific case that relates to that.
So the other question is for the Harrington House, which is very special, and a few citizens worked to save it and put it on the National Register, and they had a tenant in there for many years, was a specific thing, the oldest farm in the oldest house in that area. What's to happen with the Harrington House if we vote in favor of this amendment?
My understanding from Ms. Zamuto is the land has a conservation restriction, so that's another example where that restriction would govern. If there's a historic preservation restriction on the house, that would govern, and I would just reiterate from earlier, to the extent that the building itself could be leased, that could be done whether or not you change this bylaw under state law for up to 30 years.
So the broad answer here is that this bylaw is not going to change existing restrictions that exist on town-owned properties. Okay. Let's go to the con microphone in the gymnasium.
Gail Heyer, 54 Nancy Road.
Ms. Heyer?
I'm grateful to the Concord Bridge for publishing my letter declaring that Article 26 would be a step backwards. I was moved to write it because I believe that the current bylaw ensures legislative, that's us, oversight of executive privilege, and that the article did not get sufficient attention in the lead up to town meeting. In the April Select Board hearing, it was discussed for about 10 minutes. The article almost got even less attention. Another thank you to the 10 voters who rescued this from the consent calendar last night. This article would make a small change to the law, but it could change the way town land is used for a generation. The land use working group charge, as we saw in the last discussion, says, well, it was mentioned in the land use working group charge, it was also mentioned in the discussion for the last article, that over 100 acres of land may be soon coming into town ownership, and that's a lot of property, and town meetings should have a role, if allowed, as the town council has explained, if allowed, town meetings should have a role in how it is used. Leases for these and other parcels might allow farming, development for housing, solar farms and battery storage, or a myriad of commercial uses. Article 26 would empower one person to make long-term deals outside of the public eye and allow the select board to rubber stamp them. Few of us take the time to read select board agendas, minutes, town manager reports, or bids and proposals. Public lands need public stewardship. Vote no on Article 26 to keep power with the town meeting.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the auditorium.
I have one at the con microphone and one at the pro microphone. Let's go with the con microphone first.
Paul Moore, Blueberry Lane.
Mr.
I'd just
Moore.
like to say the previous speaker, I think, rang all the bells. I think if approved, this motion or this article would allow a small number of people to basically abrogate the democratic process and transform the town in ways that a lot of people might end up disagreeing with. Please vote against this measure. It is way too broad. It needs to be limited.
Thank you. Let's take the next speaker in the auditorium.
At the pro microphone, please.
Tracy Wynn, 404 Monument Street.
Ms. Wynn.
Thank you. I just wanted to give an example for Pamela Dritt of how this might work in a good way, which is that if there were a possibility for a 30-year lease for organizations like Gaining Ground, which leases land from the town, their ability to plan ahead and make investments in the infrastructure would be positively affected. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's take the next speaker in the auditorium.
I'm sorry, at the pro mic.
Amron Frisch, 165 Thoreau. I move to call the question. Is that the right way to say it?
It is the right way to say it, yes. Well, we've been at this for 20 minutes, so I'll entertain this motion. All those who are ready to terminate debate and go to a vote, please raise your voting slips. Oh, can I have any one of you? Okay, I see I have a second. Thank you, Mr. Terry. Okay, all right, that's great. All those opposed? Thank you. That definitely passes by 2/3 here in the gymnasium. What's it look like in the auditorium?
Nearly unanimous here. but not
All
quite.
right. We will then proceed to a vote. Let's have our voting screen up, please. And if we open the window and we have, okay, let's go. We're ready to vote. We'll give it a few more seconds to see if we have any more votes trickling in. All right, let's close the window. Wow. Well, that's a squeaker. The article passes by a vote of 156 to 145. And I will note, last night on Article 13, we may well have had to count that vote because it was pretty close, and we certainly would have had to count this one. So it's a benefit of having our clickers. All right, we will now move, and I do so declare, I declare that that passed. We'll now move to Article 27. This is remote participation at annual and special town meetings. We see the motion on the screen that Mr. McKinnon moves, that the town take affirmative action as printed in the warrant. Could we have a second, please? I see that we have one. Thank you. And we'll hear from Mr. Moore. And I'll note that both the Select Board and the Town Meeting Study Committee recommend affirmative action.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Eric Moore, 45 Francis Street. Good evening. I'm speaking as chair of the Town Meeting Study Committee. Our committee brought this article to the Select Board, and they agreed to sponsor it, and that's why you see Mr. McKenna and not Mr. Moore. So what is this about? Clicker, thank you. What is this about? We're asking you to authorize the Select Board to petition the state legislature for special legislation to allow Concord to permit voters to participate and vote remotely for open town meeting. So part of our town meeting study committee charge was to recommend ways to make town meeting more inclusive. We were also explicitly charged to consider the remote participation and voting citizen petition from last year. As part of that work, we created and publicized a survey, and we got more than 1,000 voters responding. And what you told us was to lower a barrier to town meeting. The majority of respondents want to participate, and they find it difficult to attend in person. 3 in 4 respondents find it difficult to get to town meeting. And nearly 80% favored being able to deliberate and vote remotely on issues during town meeting. But state law requires in-person attendance to vote at open town meetings. So what Concord can do is seek an exemption from this state law by filing what is called a home rule petition with the state legislature. And how that works is that your vote tonight, a yes town meeting vote, would authorize the Select Board in turn to vote to file a home rule petition with the state legislature. And then third, the state legislature would need to vote to approve the home rule measure. And our representatives are on board with this. And so we are asking for your permission to begin a process. And I have to emphasize, it's the start of a process. There are uncertainties. We don't know when. I would not expect remote participation in voting at town meeting next year. We don't know when the legislature will act. We don't know how. There's things to be worked through before any deployment, what the tech should be, what the vendor would be. That basically there's a future project to be between approval and actually deploying something that we all feel confident in. And then finally, this hybrid town meeting would be different. We expect we'll see a difference in participation. We may see differences in how people pay attention, and we may see differences in the community experience of town meeting. It'll be different, and we'll learn from that and improve, as we always do. But what we're asking for tonight is simply a beginning. We are seeking for Concord the right to try a promising change for a more inclusive town meeting. The survey told us there was a big public appetite for this change. The Town Meeting Study Committee recommended this unanimously. We ask for your approval of Article 27. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We'll open the floor for questions and comments. Do we have anybody in the...
We have someone approaching the pro microphone.
All right.
Hi.
Hi.
Janine Amaduri, Thoreau Street. Some of the obstacles to people attending town meetings in person could be being unable to find childcare for young children, having to work, or folks who are homebound or even hospital bound. And that's a position that any of us could find ourselves in without notice. So I highly encourage everyone to vote to start this process to make our meetings more inclusive.
Thank you very much. Do you have anyone else in the auditorium, Mr.
I
Van?
do not.
Okay, let's go to the pro microphone.
Marty Plotkin, 54 Francis Street.
Mr. Plotkin.
Thank you. This is really a question. This vote does not obligate us to immediately or perhaps even ever actually implement remote participation in town meeting. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I'll defer to the moderator for a proper response.
Yes, well, it would give us the authority to do it, but it wouldn't mandate if it were passed by the legislature, it wouldn't mandate that we do it. Let's go to the con microphone.
It's really a question. How many other towns in Massachusetts presently have home rule, and what has been their experience?
Mr. Moore?
To my understanding, Wayland has filed a home rule petition in previous years, and that's not been passed yet. There may be another town that is talking about a home rule petition, but it's not a large number.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the pro microphone.
Abby Flanagan, 398 Main Street.
Ms. Flanagan?
So I grew up in Carlisle, attended town meeting there for years, moved to Concord in 2016. I've attended every town meeting. My husband has never attended town meeting because we have 3 small children. My youngest is too young to attend the childcare here. So one of us needs to stay home, or we need to get a babysitter. And for those of you that haven't hired a babysitter recently, it would cost over $100 a night for us to have a babysitter. The going rate in town is about $30 an hour plus. So that might be a change from when some of you last hired a babysitter. It's also a great gig if you want it now, because it's impossible to find anybody on town meeting nights because everybody is booked. So it's disenfranchised half my household. He just can't attend, he can't vote. I'm often here because I'm a member of the planning board, I sat on the HDC, so I'm here and it's my privilege to be here. He doesn't get to participate, and I know a lot of other families are in the same situation. And if you look in the room tonight, how many young parents do you see? We have so many registered voters in this town, and we have about 300 people here tonight. That's not enough of a mandate to be making the types of decisions that we make in this room. Remote participation allows us to have full participation of our electorate. I can't urge you strongly enough to at least give us the option to consider this. I understand the drawbacks, I understand the concerns, but we need to be able to move forward in exploring those more fully. So I would ask that you support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the con microphone.
Sunweaver, 50 Belknap Street, and I'm currently opposed, mainly for one reason. If there's remote participation, I can already imagine what happens, that there will be a side, at least one side window with a group chat, where people chatting and sharing and having their own deliberation and side deliberation, which is outside of the control of the town moderator while an article is discussed here. So there will be additional influence that is not happening in the room and is not transparent for all people participating in a town meeting. The beauty is when we are here in one room, everyone hears the same information. And if there is something unpolite happening or some misinformation happening, it can be clarified here. If there's a remote participation, there will be group chat windows running parallel to that, where there's all kinds of information and misinformation flowing that are outside of the control of the town moderator. Therefore, I'm currently against this.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone in the auditorium? Oh, I see that we do.
I do. On the pro microphone, please.
Amron Frisch, 165 Thoreau. I would also encourage everybody to vote in favor of this. As I said last night, this is my first town meeting. I have enjoyed it very much, and I like being here in person. And I can understand why people who do this year after year would object to changing this format. But a lot of people can't come. I know people that can't come. I have a grade school kid, and I have friends that wanted to put their voices in and put their votes in and have them be counted. and simply could not make it work. And I think that we need to recognize that the people voting tonight on this are the people who are able to come. So it doesn't really seem fair that we're not hearing the voices of the people that are barred from this meeting. And through the moderator to the previous speaker, I'd like to say that there is Wi-Fi here.
Excuse me, we won't do that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
That's inappropriate.
You can respond to something you've heard, though.
I'd like to respond to something I've heard, that there are no side chats going on. There is Wi-Fi. People can text here. So I think that's already, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And if it's not this town, it's going to be somewhere else. Concord's town meetings petition that this article was mentioned in the Nantucket town meeting this year. Other towns are watching us. Other towns are watching other towns that are making these petitions to the state. I think that this is inevitably going to happen at some point. It's just a question of, are we going to be doing it now, or are we going to be doing it in 5 years or in 10 years? So I would encourage everybody to try to include the people who want to vote who can't make it here in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the pro microphone here in the gymnasium.
Hi, Holly Gibbons, 602 Bedford Street. I also urge everyone to vote in favor. I want to echo some of the comments I've heard as a parent. I have 2 children at home. My husband is at home with them. He typically can't come to town meeting. We brought them to our first town meeting, and they couldn't sit through 4 hours. And they don't want to go to the child care, and 9:30 is past their bedtime. So, we need other options to allow parents to participate. And I saw yesterday 2 parents from my elementary school. Tonight I've seen 1. I'm curious if people are willing to raise their hands. How many people have elementary school age children at home? Okay, so I see like 4 hands go up. Anyone have a toddler or a baby at home? Is that 1 hand in the room? So, we really need 2 hands, 3 hands. We need to make this meeting more inclusive, to have 300 to 400 people show up each night when we have thousands of registered voters, and we know that there are people at home who want to participate. I really hope folks will at least get this process started to make the meeting more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the con microphone, and then we'll go back to the auditorium.
Ned Perry, 362 Bedford Street.
Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Town of Lexington also has a petition, home rule petition. I think one of the great hallmarks of town meeting, whether open or representative, is the coming together of members of a community to decide issues facing the community. While discussions can be held and votes can be taken in a virtual format, communities are better off, in my opinion, when people meet in person to carry out our town meeting responsibilities. We get to meet our neighbors. We get to meet people who aren't our neighbors. One can sense the mood of an assembly. One can see how others feel on issues. We can have impromptu discussions to resolve problems that arise during the meeting, such as the one recently during discussion of Article 19. Things that can't happen and things that can happen well in a meeting in which everyone is just a face, things that can't happen when people are a face of a small screen and perhaps only a name or a raised hand on a list. During the pandemic, RTM, or representative town meetings, were authorized to hold their town meetings virtually, at least in part due to having fixed numbers of elected representatives, all able to be certified at home on their computers, if that is how they wanted to participate. As I spoke with people who participated in those meetings, they were not happy with how those discussions could be managed or votes taken. This article, promoted by the Town Meeting Study Committee and now being moved by the Select Board, is actually contrary to much of the focus of the Study Committee. That is, to make our town meeting move faster and be completed on a shorter amount of time. One representative town meeting found that their usual 5 or 6 night session in-person annual town meeting more than doubled to 12 to 13 sessions when town meeting was done in a hybrid fashion with remote voting. There is great value in making personal connections in person when we come together as a body, as a legislature, as a community.
Mr. Perry, you will have to wrap up.
I hope that my vote, I hope that you will, It is my hope that we will preserve this purest form of democracy, in-person town meeting, please vote no on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the auditorium.
At the pro microphone, please.
Ray Burdemessa, 1001 Main Street. Madam Moderator,
Please proceed.
I have a question. When we say remote, is there any limitations when we say remote? Can active duty persons in Korea be able to vote, be participating? Are there going to be limitations? I know this is a new technology they're trying to develop at this point, but is there anything at this point that's limited to people currently living in, or people in Concord at the time of the voting?
Not necessarily. The limitation would be that you have to be a person registered to vote in Concord. And then the other limitation would be what is the available technology that is secure, that is capable of connecting people in different places. Let's go to the next speaker in the auditorium.
So we have another speaker at the pro microphone, please.
I just want to be clear, we're not talking...
Please introduce yourself,
Oh,
though.
sorry.
Yep.
Ellie Garvey, 25 Damon Street. We're not talking about whether we want remote voting or not. All we're doing, as I understand, is authorizing the select board to get started on the process. Later on, you know, in a year or two or three, if the state legislature says, sure, go ahead, then we can have an article that says, do we want it? Is that right? So we're only voting on whether to tell the select board, yeah, go ahead, right?
Mr. Moore?
Yes, thank you. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's go to the con microphone here in the gymnasium.
Abraham Fisher, 400 Hayward Mill Road.
Mr. Fisher.
Life is made up of trade-offs and priorities. The people in the room right now have made coming to town meeting a priority. For some people that's easier, for some people that's harder. I take days of vacation to be able to come to town meeting. My children came, 30 years ago we established childcare in this town meeting in order to allow more people to come. There were years when my children were the only children there. My wife has acted as a teller with babies strapped to her back. We make town meeting a priority. I think we're asking the wrong question. I don't think it's how can we make town meeting easier to get to by changing town meeting. I think we need to look at how can we make town meeting easier to get to by changing the town. I don't mean convincing everybody town meeting is great, although that would be wonderful, but it's things like how many town civic organizations have meetings tonight? How many Little League games or soccer games or whatever are happening tonight? How many choir rehearsals are happening tonight? We need to get all of those things to allow people to get their priorities. That said, town meeting is always going to be a nuisance. We're never going to find a way to reach everybody. I don't think that the proposed way here is a particularly good one, but I think we need to look at things that will actually allow us to use the town meeting we've got and allow people to and foment an attitude that, oh yeah, I'm going to town meeting, everybody goes, don't you? Rather than allow people to sit on their couch and watch CSI on one screen and town meeting on the other.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the pro microphone.
Shreya Patel, 397 Sudbury Road.
Ms. Patel.
I was raised in a household where civic participation was especially important, and I am extremely grateful for that. However, this is my first time being able to attend town meeting, and the reason is very simple. I have been a registered voter since the first moment I was able, and I have mailed in my ballots for all town elections since that moment, but I have not been able to attend this meeting because I was mailing in those ballots from Pennsylvania where I was in college until my recent graduation. I am very happy to be here, but I recognize that I'm a member of an underrepresented demographic in this room, the 18 to 30-year-old vote. These people are in our town, they are me, they are my peers, my classmates, and honestly, if anything would make it easier for us to have a voice in how our town is voting on all the articles we're discussing, we should move forward in exploring that. It's important to hear all voices in this town, and I think that instilling civic participation in people my age is especially important in our day and age. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone? I see we have...
We have one at the pro microphone. Ms.
Okay.
Garvey.
Ameren Frisch, 165 Thoreau. I'd just like to add to my previous comments that in addition to people who have a challenge to attend town meeting because of parenting or other commitments, there are people who are unable to. They are disabled. They are, for a variety of reasons, they don't have the privilege of being able to. And I don't feel like it's something that I would support to make people feel like they only have a chance to vote if they have the ability or privilege to be able to be here in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to the con microphone here in the gymnasium.
Tanya Gala, 62 Prescott Road. The biggest problem here right now is that there is no technology to decide who is voting for whom. And until that is guaranteed, developed, it doesn't make sense to move ahead exploring anything. And when that is developed, then it will be that, when somebody said it might take 5 years or whatever, that's fine. I also think that two other things. One is that another danger is with this kind of unclarity about who is voting. There is also a lot of room for fraud, especially in contentious cases where special interests are involved with financial and technological advantages and connections. So that's something else to keep in mind. As for the advantages of the remote voting, I think that right now there are people who can't come. Some of them are parents, except that people do show up when it's a field issue or a school budget issue. So people do show up when they really care about something. The younger generation will be able to use the technology with much more ease than people who are, I know people who are older and don't come to town meeting. They probably would also be able to vote, but they won't have the same access to the technology. So the expansion of the options will not favor everyone equally either. But again, the main issue is that we won't know who is voting what, and that's the main reason we should wait. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to invite the person here at the pro microphone to come to the microphone because
Yes,
she's
please.
standing there with a young child.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Moore, Blueberry Lane. I have one child in care, which I think closes at 9:30, and one sleeping in my arms. Can I call the vote? Can maybe call the vote? Nope. It's pretty late.
Yes, well, so that is calling the question. Well, that is a point. You're not supposed to say anything except I call the question.
Okay. That's good.
Well, yeah, okay. So we'll move on for just a little bit. But let me ask, how many of you, if you know how you're going to vote on this article, would you put up your voting slips? Thank you. If you're still trying to figure out how you're going to vote, would you put up your voting slip? Okay, so I think I got 3 people in here
I have none.
still trying to figure it out. You have none. All right, so just bear that in mind, folks. Okay. Let's go to the pro microphone here in the gymnasium.
Corey Atkins, 5 Concord Green.
Sorry, I missed you.
And former state representative for Concord. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I realize what a treasured occasion this is to come together as a community and decide what our priorities and values are. And I have represented towns that have direct town meetings, representative town meetings, and I've worked with cities where they have city council meetings. And they're all very different experiences. Fortunately, we live in a day and age now where technology can include more of this this town and the people of this town. Because one of the things that I can say, having spent my life working in government, this town meeting is not democratic. Look around. Just in terms of demographics, we're totally off. And we don't include major portions of people in this community. And they have expressed that they would like to be included. Now, getting this through the legislature is going to be a horrendous task because they won't do anything for one town. They will do it for the entire Commonwealth. So I would really encourage people to let the selectmen go forward. Let them see what community's doing. We are changing, you can tell everywhere. We are on the brink of change of what people think democracies are and if they are included in that concept or not. We want to always move in the direction of inclusion.
Okay, and Ms. Atkins, you will have to wrap it up. Thank you very much. Let's go to the con microphone here in the gymnasium.
Sue Felsham, 19 Sunnyside Lane, member of the Planning Board, speaking for myself. Following up on a couple of previous comments, I saw a couple dozen hands go up of people who are here who have children, which is a larger number than mentioned. I have had occasions where I have known how I was going to vote, going into a question, even a long way through the discussion of a question, and then I've heard some comment from someone that opens my mind and makes me change to a different vote on an article. So when the moderator asks us, do we already know how we're voting, and would that be a reason to cut off debate? I don't think that is a sufficient reason to cut off debate. It is, whatever we do, we are going to have a problem with good democracy. Either we will disenfranchise people, or by going to remote town meeting, we will have people being able to submit their votes, but we will be degrading the quality of our democracy. We are seeing all around the world democracies turning into show democracies where many people vote, but it is not a functioning democracy. When we are here together in a room, we see each other as real human beings. We can't help it because we're together. When we are remote, it is fake people. We have also seen since the pandemic how our society has been falling apart when we no longer see each other as real human beings. When I vote for or against any article, I know I'm raising your taxes. I'm denying you a service by voting against on something that would raise your taxes. And these feel very real to me. When we are remote, it's not just a group chats. It's not the person who's simultaneously watching town meeting and CSI that worries me. It's the person who's only watching CSI till they get the message that tells them vote this way on this article and totally misinforms them about what it says. It's a problem
Ms.
either.
Felsham, you will have to wrap up.
That'll do.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the auditorium.
At the pro microphone.
Pam Rockwell, 1810 Main Street. I'd like to call the question.
Okay, well, that's a proper motion to call the question. Do we have a second? Which one of you is seconding? Okay, you.
We have a few
all right,
here.
good. All right, although this requires, again, 2/3 vote, not debatable. All those in favor of ending debate and proceeding to a vote? Thank you very much. All those opposed? Well, that motion carries here in the gymnasium by well more than 2/3. What's it look like at the auditorium?
It looked unanimous to me.
All right, then. We will now proceed to a vote. Could we put the voting screen up, please? Okay, and are we open? All right, and can we have the clock? Great. Windows open. Let's vote. We'll wait just another couple of seconds. All right, let's close the window. It passes by a vote of 195 to 100, and I do so declare. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting to tomorrow night at 6:30, please? So moved. Could I have a second? All those in favor, up with your voting slips. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. See you at 6:30.